Chapter 122. After eating, it flew up and kept flying upwards. Soon, it disappeared from Xiao Xian's sight. On the mountain, in the sinkhole, a black shadow flashed silently from one of the cracks in the stone wall inside the sinkhole. Yangguang was shining brightly. Under the bright Yangguang, the black shadow went straight to the sky and was hard to catch. If Xiao Xian could see it, he would find that it was moving the bones in its nose and throat quickly, making a sound that even intermediate totem warriors could not hear. However, it was precisely after such an inaudible sound that large bats flew out from various parts of the forest. No matter what these bats were doing just now, whether they were hunting, eating, chasing after the people who threw the smoke grass into the cave, or other things, they all stopped what they were doing and flew up without hesitation towards the sky above the sinkhole. In the gray area full of giant spider webs, the people who were struggling to avoid being chased saw that the bats chasing them all turned around. The bats stuck to the spider webs struggled crazily, gnawing at the spider webs. After breaking free from the spider webs, they flew up and flew towards the sinkhole. What's wrong with them? A person who was so tired that he was panting asked his companions. The direction they are flying is over the mountain. Did something happen to the leader and the others? Let's go. The team members blew their whistles, using the sound to communicate their movements. The people who were responsible for attracting the bats in the cave all rushed towards the bat cave. When they got out of the forest, there was no longer dense branches blocking their vision. They saw that the sky above the sinkhole was gathering a dark cloud, and this dark cloud was getting bigger and bigger. Be it nearby or far away, almost all the bats flew toward the sinkhole at this moment and joined the dark cloud. In the cave, Xiao Xian recovered some strength. It was not good to stay here for long. If they stayed here, the people who were unconscious would fall asleep again, even if they woke up. Xiao Xian carried the people who were unconscious on the pile of bat corpses out of the foggy area one by one. After carrying everyone out, Xiao Xian gave them some herbs one by one. There were no living bats in the cave. After a while, Xiao Xian heard voices coming from outside the cave. It was the person responsible for luring the bats away. Seeing all the bodies lying on the ground, the people who came over were so scared that their hearts skipped a beat. Only after checking them one by one did they relax. What's going on outside? Xiao Xian asked. The ones that were chasing us have all flown to the top of the mountain. The ones in the cave. Well, the bats you mentioned have all left. There are a lot of them gathered at the top of the mountain, the man said. Let's get out of here quickly. That was indeed the case. Xiao Xian agreed. If the bats gathered outside, they wouldn't be able to get out. After carrying everyone out of the cave, Xiao Xian looked up at the sky. At this time, the dark clouds in the sky had become very large, and the surrounding sky seemed to have darkened. Xiao Xian stood there, unable to sense a trace of Yangguang. He turned around and looked around. There were many places at the foot of the mountain that were shrouded in shadows. Moreover, this area was rapidly expanding because there were still bats rushing back from afar. What do they want to do? I don't know. Seeing such a scale, the people who were still conscious all felt that what they had done before was too bold. There were no more than 150 people in total. But what about the bats above? Such a huge number was too terrifying. Could it be that all the bats in the forest had come here? While looking at the sky, Xiao Xian suddenly heard some noises. He looked over and saw Caesar running towards him. When the 5 hunting groups were on the mission, Xiao Xian didn't let Caesar join them. Caesar hated the smell of the smoke grass, so he let Caesar stay in the cave of Cha's hunting group, waiting with the wounded. But to his surprise, Caesar actually ran over. Why is he here? Did something happen at the first location? The people around him asked nervously. No, Caesar is just worried about this place, Xiao Xian said. Caesar was staying in the cave, but when he heard the voice of the bat leader, he rushed out and found this place by following the smell. Rubbing Caesar's head, Xiao Xian asked Caesar to rest on the side. In the sky, the dark cloud had expanded to its limit. No more bats joined it, so it flew towards one direction. That's Xiao Xian looked over. In that direction, in the distance, there was a very tall mountain, taller than the surrounding mountains. It was surrounded by clouds and mist, and the top of the mountain was covered with white snow. I remember that there are many caves on that mountain. Yes, I once went there with the chief, but there were many cave bears and other ferocious beasts living in the caves, so the chief didn't allow us to get close. The people in the hunting group were talking about their understanding of that mountain. Now, the The bats that had gathered together and formed a huge, dark cloud were flying towards that mountain. Were they going to fight for territory? Maybe a fight is unavoidable. Which side do you think will win? I don't know. I don't want those things to win. Otherwise, how can we hunt in the future? The people in the hunting group were worried. The other people in the hunting group patted each other's shoulders sympathetically. It was really bad luck to fight against these monsters. If it weren't for the fire crystals, they wouldn't dare to provoke these monsters. Since the bats had left, the rest of the people discussed and decided to bring the unconscious people back to the cave first. Probably because of those bats, they didn't encounter any ferocious beasts or wild animals on the way back. One day later, among the unconscious people, Mai and the others were the first to wake up. But after they woke up, they were a little dispirited. They didn't get better until they rested for another day. Xiao Xian said that the bat that broke out of its shell first killed other bats of its kind. After it became the leader, it led the bats to the mountain to fight for territory. When the 5 group leaders heard this, they couldn't sit still and went there to have a look in person. The new leader of the bats led a large group of bats to fight for territory. There were a lot of casualties, but they won and drove out all the other creatures that lived in the mountain cave. When Mai and the others went there, they saw some dead bodies of cave bears. Those huge cave bears were also driven out of the mountain by the bats and didn't dare to step in again. Although this meant that they might have to face those bats again in the future, the 5 group leaders were more happy than worried. Because those bats won't go back to the original mountain after they took the new territory. That was to say, they could go there now and dig without worries. This fact made the 5 group leaders so happy that they forgot that their bodies hadn't recovered yet. They hurriedly asked people to get ready to dig. The giant pit became much more peaceful because of the absence of those bats. The 5 group leaders first dug out the layer of bat feces at the bottom of the giant pit, and then Xiao Xian drew a circle at the place where he sensed the fire crystals. The closer the fire crystals were to the ground, the smaller the circle was. After that, the others began to dig. There were still 17 fire crystals at the bottom of the giant pit. That was to say, they could dig out at least 17 more fire crystals. No matter how big or small they were, it would be great if they could dig them out. I didn't expect to be alive, Chung said with emotion. We didn't expect that either. Mai smiled bitterly. They were lucky this time. Fortunately, that leader beast didn't attack them. I wonder if that leader beast will become a king beast in the future. Cha said. Many groups of beasts had leaders, but king beasts were extremely rare. Those that were called king beasts were the absolute kings of the group. They belonged to the whole group, not a single group. I think it's possible. At that time, we didn't even have the power to fight back. I've been hunting for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen such a ferocious beast. If one day that leader beast becomes a king beast, I will ask the shaman to change the hunting route. Chung said. Places where there were king beasts were absolutely forbidden. The stoneworms were an exception because, relatively speaking, stoneworms wouldn't attack people. But those bats were different. No matter whether that leader beast could become a king beast or not, or how long it would take for it to become a king beast, the 5 team leaders all made a joint decision. In the future, they would stay as far away from that mountain as possible. Never, ever, ever provoke those beasts. After Mai and the others were taken out of the bat cave, the miasma area became even more poisonous. Maybe it was because there were more dead bodies. They didn't enter that miasma area again, so they didn't know what had happened. Xiao Xian didn't tell Mai and the others the whole story. He left out some details, such as the fire crystals, the leader beast absorbing the energy of the fire crystals, and the leader beast eating all the other living creatures except for the warriors in the hunting group. Xiao Xian could tell some things to the shaman, but he couldn't tell the others. How could he explain it to the shaman when he got back? Xiao Xian looked at his palm and thought. 5 days later, all the fire crystals were dug out from the place where Xiao Xian had marked. Looking at the small bag of fire crystals, the 5 team leaders' eyes were filled with tears. They had almost been wiped out because of these. They put the fire crystals in the best animal skin bag, even the ones that Chung and Mai had kept for themselves. Xian, where is your fire crystal? Come on, put them together and wrap them up. When we get back to the tribe, we can use them together. Mai said. It's gone. Xiao Xian said. He had absorbed all the energy of that small fire crystal. After burning up all the energy, the fire crystal turned into a dim white powder. But Xiao Xian couldn't tell them that. You lost it. The 5 team leaders paused and looked at Xiao Xian. After making sure that Xiao Xian really couldn't take it out and didn't want to keep it for himself, the 5 felt it was a pity. But Xiao Xian carried them out of the bat corpses one by one, so they couldn't blame him. This time, the one who made the biggest contribution was still Xiao Xian. Well, Caesar would be counted in. Mao, like the other young warriors who were recovering, didn't participate in the digging of the fire crystals, but just watched from the edge of the giant pit. The 5 team leaders carefully put the small bag of fire crystals away and happily discussed how to ask the shaman for a reward when they returned to the tribe. Mao, on the other hand, was thinking in his mind, I wonder what kind of expression my Abba would have when he knows about this when the hunting team gathers. At the same time, Ta, who was hunting in the green field, sneezed. He felt inexplicably uncomfortable recently. Why? Chapter 123. Since most of the hunting time was spent dealing with bats and digging for fire crystals, the warriors in the hunting group would not hunt for food on purpose, except for hunting when they were hungry. Basically, no one in the 5 hunting groups would go out of their way to hunt and store food. As the gathering day approached, there were only a few days left for hunting. The 5 group leaders stayed together almost all day, just to keep an eye on that small bag of fire crystals. As for hunting prey, the 5 group leaders would tell you that it was just a small matter. Finally, the gathering day arrived. Ta led the advance group and hunted a lot of prey. In the first hunt of the year, Gigu's hunting group had a good harvest. Ta did not want to lose to them. Luckily, they were lucky enough to find a kind of curly-tailed plant. He did not know what would happen if Mai and the others brought the wolf. Ta was a little worried. They came back earlier this time. They thought that it would take 2 or 3 days for the 5 hunting groups to arrive. Unexpectedly, the 5 hunting groups arrived together. This had never happened before. Only when a hunting group was in great danger would they ask for help from other hunting groups. However, the 5 hunting groups, although many were injured, they all looked positive. Looking at the wolf, well, it seemed to be getting along well with the other warriors. Seeing that the 5 hunting groups were in good condition, but with only a pitiful amount of prey, Ta felt that he was holding his breath again. What happened? Ta asked in a bad tone. The leaders of the 5 hunting groups stood together, showing their white teeth to tower. Their smiles were very stupid. In the tribe, Old Ku had been suffering from insomnia recently, especially in the days before the return of the hunting group. He walked to the path of glory several times every day. He wondered how Xian and the others were doing. Would Caesar perform well? It was the first time for him to go out of the tribe. There were so many beasts in the forest. Would he be okay? While he was thinking, Old Ku suddenly heard an eagle cry in the sky. He looked up at the cha-cha in the sky. Old Ku paused. The hunting group was back. Without any hesitation, Old Ku hurried to the path of glory. When he got there, some people were already standing by the road, talking. I heard that many people were seriously injured this time. Which hunting group? I don't know. Old Ku was worried. Could it be Mai's hunting group? Before they set off, someone had said that Mai would probably encounter trouble if he brought Caesar a wolf, who would bring a wild beast out to hunt. Many people around them also mentioned Caesar, and their words were not very nice. Old Ku almost got into a fight with someone. Soon after, those who were more seriously injured were sent back. There were indeed quite a few of them. Half a day later, the hunting team showed up. Except for the advance group, the other groups didn't have much prey, someone said. Not only was it not much, it was pitifully little. What happened? While the crowd was discussing, many people in the other hunting group were also thinking to themselves, sure enough, our hunting group is stronger. Look at the results of their hunting team this time. No one had expected that the results of the hunt would be so terrible. In the past, every time they came back, they would bring back a lot of food. Even at the worst time, it was much better than this time. Sai, forget it. It's good that you're back. It was the first hunt of the year, and many people were looking forward to it. But now, they were inevitably disappointed. Winter was over, and it seemed that they would have to continue to starve. Their families were already starving. Even though they were disappointed, they still decided to comfort the people who had returned. It was not easy for them to adjust their emotions. They planned to say a few words of comfort when the main group came over. Unexpectedly, the people who had embarked on the road of glory all held their heads high and puffed out their chests. They did not feel dispirited at all. They pulled the few prey they had and waved their fists at their families on the roadside. The people who had prepared a lot of comforting words swallowed them back. What happened to them? Were they shocked by the results of the hunt? No one could figure out why they were behaving like that. Old Ke looked at Xiao Xian and Caesar, who were safe and sound, and finally felt relieved. The results of the hunt didn't matter, as long as they were back. However, Old Ke looked at the team leader Ta, who was walking in front of the team. The expression on his face was very subtle. You could say that he was happy, but he was not as proud as everyone thought. But you could also say that he was depressed. What on earth happened? When the hunting team finished the sword cleansing ceremony, they rushed down the mountain. Some warriors even forgot about the small amount of prey they had. Soon, everyone knew why the hunting team behaved so strangely this time. Fire crystals. Old Ke's mouth trembled. He confirmed it several times, and then he stamped his crutch hard. Not only Old Ke in the tribe, the same thing happened in many people's families. Some older people even fainted because of excessive excitement. Bad results? There was no problem. The fire crystals were the biggest reward. Poor food at home? That was not a problem. There were still fish in the river at the foot of the mountain. They would not die if they ate fish for 20 days. What? Did they think the energy in those fish was too little? There were fire crystals. The shaman had said that all those who had contributed to this matter, including their relatives, parents, wives, children, brothers, and sisters, could be called up. Now the tribe was bustling. Those who were related by blood hurried to find connections, and those who were not created connections. What a rare opportunity. It was said that they had found a lot of fire crystals this time. Xiao Xian played an important role in this matter, but in the tribe, except for Old Ke, Xiao Xian had no close friends. The shaman specially gave him a few more places, so that he could bring people who were not related by blood up the mountain. Old Ke, Gu, and some others who had helped Xiao Xian before were brought up the mountain. Tu and Jeba, who had awakened their power this year, were also brought up by Xiao Xian. Unfortunately, only those who had awakened their power could absorb the fire crystals. So for some people, even if Xiao Xian wanted to help them, it was useless. That day, the people who were taken to the mountain were all overjoyed, while those who couldn't, especially those from the other hunting group, were so envious and jealous that their eyes turned red. The shaman put a few fire crystals next to the fire seed. After he finished chanting, the fire seed's flame grew bigger and swallowed the fire crystals next to it. Different from when Xiao Xian absorbed the fire crystals by himself, in the fire pit, the red energy released by the fire crystals could be seen by everyone. The red energy came out from the fire and was absorbed by the people sitting around the fire pit. Although this was an action of 5 hunting teams, the advance group could not be completely abandoned. After all, the advance group was looking for medicine for everyone. Every time someone was seriously injured, they would use the medicine they found. Therefore, there were also people from the advance group sitting around them. However, they always felt a little uncomfortable, especially Ta, who had a very complicated feeling. It was that boy again. That was what Ta thought after he knew the cause and effect. Although the fire crystals they brought back were few, they were not used up. The ones that were burned were enough for those who went up the mountain to absorb. More would be a waste. So, the rest of the fire crystals were kept by the shaman, and he would reward them according to their merits. If others wanted to absorb the fire crystals, they had to show their merits, and the shaman would naturally reward them. The shaman praised Caesar in person, and also said that he would never take back the pattern plate he gave Caesar. That was to say, unless Caesar died of natural causes or had an accident during hunting, as long as he was in the tribe, no one could kill him. That was the shaman's attitude. With Caesar as a precedent, some people were wondering if they should also catch a cub and raise it. After absorbing the fire crystals for 2 days, several warriors in the tribe advanced from the primary level to the intermediate level. For example, Lang Jie and Ong had already broken through the chop. The totem patterns on their arms had already extended beyond their elbows. This made Lang Jie party at home for several days. He even threw away his grandpa's precious stone hammer. Back then, Tua and Kiki were among the same batch of people who were awakened with Lang Ga. Everyone knew that they were very outstanding, and these 2 people were promoted to intermediate totem warriors last year. However, Lang Jie did not expect that he would be promoted so soon. The topic of the fire crystals would last for a long time in the tribe. The tribe was not big, and there was only one tribe in the vast area. There were few topics to talk about. So this topic would not die down in a short time. Every day when they went out, they would hear people talking about the fire crystals. For example, whose warriors advanced after absorbing the energy of the fire crystals, whose warriors were still a little bit worse, and whose warriors failed to go up the mountain, etc. In addition, Caesar and Xiao Xian were also hot topics. I heard that the place where the fire crystals were dug was found by that wolf. I'm so jealous. If we had a wolf in our team, would we also find the fire crystals? Even if we can't find the fire crystals, it's good to find something else. Why don't we go hunting this time and catch some cubs? Xiao Xian seemed to have said that it was easier to train a cub. Didn't the wolves in the forest often fight? It's a pity that those cubs were killed. We can bring them back and raise them ourselves. It won't cost us much food. That makes sense. Xiao Xian did not expect that just this hunting trip would make people want to raise wolves. After the fire crystals, Xiao Xian went to the shaman's place to talk. The shaman asked about some details, such as why Xiao Xian could sense the location of the fire crystals. Even if he had more power of inheritance than others, he might not be able to sense the location of the fire crystals so clearly. Others might not know, but as the shaman, he knew it too well. In the beginning, the shamaness and Xiao Xian were just probing each other. In the process, they started to trust each other and revealed more information. The shaman let Xiao Xian know some things that even the chief didn't know, and Xiao Xian also showed the shaman many abilities that were different from others in the tribe. Here, there was only one tribe, and the shaman's words were absolute authority. If it were a selfish person, he might feel that Xiao Xian threatened his position and wanted to get rid of him quickly. But in fact, every time Xiao Xian showed some abilities that were different from others, the shaman was very happy. His old face, which usually maintained an indifferent attitude, would always show a rare deep smile. Xiao Xian did not intend to hide it from the shaman this time. He pointed at his eyebrows and said, "The totem told me. Did you really lose the small piece of fire crystal that you were holding?" The shaman asked again. He didn't care about anything, he was just curious. He didn't think that Xiao Xian would easily lose such an important thing. Moreover, since he could sense the fire crystal, why didn't he notice it when he lost it? "I didn't say I lost it. I just said that the fire crystal is gone." Xiao Xian raised his hand and said to the shaman, "I can absorb fire crystals." Chapter 124. The shaman's face trembled violently, as if he couldn't believe Xiao Xian's words. However, Xiao Xian didn't seem to be lying. "Wait a moment." The shaman turned around and took out a piece of fire crystal, handing it to Xiao Xian. "You absorb it, let me see." Xiao Xian didn't say much. He took the fire crystal and began to absorb it. Others couldn't see the energy of the fire crystal when Xiao Xian absorbed it, but the shaman could see a little. Although it wasn't clear, those energy lines were real. How could it be? The shaman was puzzled. Xiao Xian told the secret in the hope that the shaman could answer some of his doubts. He didn't know much about the special power in his body, so he needed the shaman to explain. But unexpectedly, the shaman didn't know the answer. Seeing the shaman lost in thought again, Xiao Xian put the fire crystal in his hand on the stone table in front of the shaman. Xiao Xian's action brought the shaman back to reality. He looked at the fire crystal in front of him, which was as big as a quail egg, and then at Xiao Xian. He wanted to see some reluctance, dissatisfaction, or greed in Xiao Xian's eyes. After all, the biggest contributor was still Xiao Xian. According to the distribution, Xiao Xian should get the most benefits. But in fact, Xiao Xian didn't get much. However, the shaman found that Xiao Xian's eyes were very calm. There was no reluctance, no greed, and no dissatisfaction with the distribution of the fire crystal. What a state of mind! The shaman was moved. For the tribe, Xian was wronged. "Take this fire crystal," the shaman said. "No need." Seeing the shaman's guilty face, Xiao Xian said, "How about a smaller one? This one is too big. If I lose it, it will be a big loss." A rice-sized fire crystal could last for several days. There was no need to use such a big one. Moreover, they didn't usually use it in the tribe. They only used it when hunting, but they didn't need so many. The shaman felt that Xiao Xian was actually a person of noble character. He was not greedy for merit, he was not greedy, everything he did was for the tribe. Thinking of this, he said to Xiao Xian in an even more amiable manner, "Take it." "All right." Xiao Xian took back the fire crystal the size of a quail egg and said, "Actually, the fire crystal doesn't have much effect on me. I won't improve even if I absorb it." The The shaman was speechless. Xiao Xian wasn't lying. The energy of the fire crystals didn't affect him as much as the others. Others would have an obvious improvement after absorbing the fire crystals, but Xiao Xian didn't seem to have any other benefits other than having a better spirit and a faster recovery of physical strength. He had absorbed more than half of the small piece of fire crystal that he had used as an experiment. This time, he had absorbed a lot of energy from the fire crystals by the fire pit with the others. He had absorbed more energy than the other warriors, but the totem patterns on his arms did not extend. Coming out from the shaman's place, Xiao Xian had several animal skin scrolls in his hands. They were empty scrolls used to make wu roll. After talking about the fire crystals, the shaman showed Xiao Xian some ancient scrolls. They were all drawn by the shaman in the past. Among them, there was a wu roll about hunting dogs drawn by the ancestors. The shaman was like this. The more you showed your ability, the more help he would give you. As long as it was beneficial to the tribe, he would open the door to help you. In the past, the shaman might not have shown these early wu roll scrolls to Xiao Xian. After all, they involved some secrets of the tribe, and before the time was right, the shaman didn't want to let others know about these secrets. But now the shaman changed his mind. The ancient scrolls drawn by the ancestors were well kept by the shaman. After thousands of years, the ancient scrolls were not damaged much. However, these ancient scrolls couldn't be taken out. They could only be read at the shaman's place. Xiao Xian first skimmed through the ancient scrolls, and then picked the one about hunting dogs and carefully read it. After going down the mountain in the afternoon, Xiao Xian locked himself in the room and began to draw on the empty scroll with a pen. He copied down what he had seen in the ancient scrolls. When he was still in the cave, Xiao Xian had seen pictures of hunting warriors with hunting dogs from the murals in the stone room. But he didn't have a clear idea. After all, this was a new world. Anything that looked normal might hide many secrets that others didn't know. But this time, after reading the ancient scrolls, Xiao Xian also found that the ancestors had different requirements for hunting dogs. According to what was written in the ancient scroll, the ancestors would select a group of healthy, strong, and clever puppies when the hounds were still young. Then they would undergo strict training. During the training, some puppies might die, and the last ones who survived would go through the second round of selection. The hunting dogs raised by the ancestors were divided into ordinary hunting dogs and accompanying hunting dogs. The ordinary hunting dogs were the ones that were left behind after training. They would usually participate in hunting or defense, but they were not truly recognized by the tribe and were not passed down by the tribe. Accompanying hunting dogs were different. They were carefully selected, and they had enough strength and loyalty. They were recognized by the whole tribe, and the shaman engraved the tribe's totem on them. From then on, they would become a member of the tribe. They could also participate in the sacrifice. They could absorb the totem power from the fire totem like others, and they would be much stronger than ordinary hunting dogs. However, this engraving only existed in their generation. The pups of accompanying hunting dogs were still like ordinary hunting dogs. They had to go through training and selection to be recognized. But generally speaking, the offspring of accompanying hunting dogs were very good. As for the engraving secret skill, only the tribe's shaman could master it, because it needed the power of inheritance. When Xiao Xian was reading the ancient scrolls at the shaman's place, the shaman said that if Xiao Xian wanted to try, he would find all the ancient scrolls about this. After all, now it seemed that Caesar already met the requirements of engraving. The engraving secret skill is very complicated, and it can't be mastered in a short time. This was what the shaman said when Xiao Xian left. Xiao Xian understood what the shaman meant. The shaman just didn't want Xiao Xian to be too impatient. If he tried to engrave before fully mastering the skill, not only would the engraving fail, but Caesar might also die. According to the shaman volume, there was a chance of success when the secret engraving skill was used. Among the 10 selected hounds, only half of them succeeded in engraving the engraving skill. It was very risky. Even the current shaman had never tried the engraving secret skill. After all, there was no animal in the tribe that he could try it on. Xiao Xian had to think carefully about what to do. It was up to him to make the choice, and the shaman wouldn't interfere. Since there was such a big risk, Xiao Xian naturally wouldn't treat it lightly. He had to study the so-called engraving secret skill first. Looking at Caesar, who was lying at his feet and yawning, Xiao Xian sighed in his heart. Caesar was just a wild animal, not at the level of a ferocious beast. In the forest, he couldn't compare to the alpha wolf in the pack. This was determined by his innate condition, and had nothing to do with Caesar himself. It wasn't possible to become a ferocious beast from an ordinary wild animal overnight. Just like the bats in the bat cave, every one of them had to step on a mountain of corpses to become a ferocious beast. In such a big environment, ordinary wild animals couldn't survive for long in the forest. Even the people in the tribe had to work hard to become stronger. Whether it was humans or beasts, they all tried to swim up the pyramid, leaving behind countless corpses on every floor. Alas, we can only take it slow. Xiao Xian sighed as he looked at Caesar, who was still yawning slowly. Every day, Xiao Xian copied the ancient scrolls he read at the shaman's place onto a new animal skin roll. Then he studied them carefully and used the power of inheritance according to the instructions in the scrolls. The shaman also took out all the ancient scrolls related to the engraving secret skill and showed them to Xiao Xian. Except when he went out to hunt, Xiao Xian continued to copy the ancient scrolls as long as he stayed in the tribe. In Xiao Xian's room, he had finished copying more than 10 animal skin rolls. This was the result of many times of copying. While Xiao Xian was copying these ancient scrolls, many people came to him. Since the people in the tribe had the idea of raising wild animals, every time the hunting team came back, there would be people coming to ask about it. For example, Mo Air came to Xiao Xian's room one day. Mo Air wanted to ask about the Xiao Xian's methods of raising and training, but no one had any experience in this field. It seemed simple, but many people kept raising them until they died. Xiao Xian looked at the cub in Mo Air's hand and raised his eyebrows. Cave lion. This cub was not easy to find. Cave lions were quite ferocious, and most of them would grow up to be ferocious beasts. Even wolves would not dare to provoke them. Mo Air wondered what would happen to this cub. According to Mo Air, on their hunting route, a cave bear fought with a cave lion in a mountain. The cave lion lost, and the cub in the cave was bitten to death. When the hunting team went there was only one cub left. So Mo Air brought it back and wanted to try raising it himself. Xiao Xian had no experience in raising a cave lion. At first, he treated Caesar as a dog, but in the end, he still had the ferocious nature of a wolf. Fortunately, Caesar could control it. As for Mo Air's cave lion, Xiao Xian could only tell him some general things to pay attention to. As for how to raise it, it was up to Mo Air. This kind of ferocious beast had to be guarded at all times, and could not be allowed to get out of control. If something went wrong, the people in the tribe would kill it first. Even though they knew it would be troublesome to raise it, many people still tried. Not only Mo Air, but in the next few hunting missions, every time someone brought back a wolf cub similar to the one Caesar had when he first arrived. Some people also brought back other animals. Some people vowed to raise them, but in the end, they ended up in the pot or in the stomach. But there were still a few people who insisted, and most of them were young warriors like Mo Air. During the winter, Xiao Xian had demonstrated the ability of flying animals like Cha-Cha to everyone. At the beginning of this year, Caesar had been recognized by the tribe. This had also given the group of young warriors a new direction to take. Xiao Xian was now the first person in the tribe who raised animals and was recognized by the shaman. So every time someone brought back a cub, they would run to him to ask about it. Especially Mao, it was understandable for others to catch wolves, tigers, leopards, lions, etc. In the tribe, these ferocious carnivorous beasts were the most satisfying. But why did Mao bring back a wild boar cub? No, it was not a wild boar, but more like a deer dolphin. Chapter 125. When Mao was hunting, he saw creatures with 4 fangs and thought they were like ferocious boars. He saw a few wild boars with 4 fangs. When he finally caught a cub and brought it back, he was told that it wasn't a wild boar, but another kind of wild beast that looked like a wild boar. They had 2 pairs of 4 fangs, and they didn't have thick fur on their bodies. They looked a little fierce. He thought it was a cub of a ferocious beast, but it turned out to be just a wild beast. Mao was very disappointed after he knew it, but he did not kill the cub and eat it. Instead, he raised it and went down the mountain to ask Xiao Xian about how to raise it. Many people laughed at Mao secretly. As the eldest grandson of the chief and the son of the team leader, he had to raise such a creature. Compared with other people who raised wolves, tigers, leopards, and so on, Mao raised this one as a food preparation. Mao named the creature that looked like a deer dolphin Sia, which was probably Mao's obsession. Fortunately, the cub he caught was a male, and he did not find any ferocious beast with 4 pairs of fangs. This kind of creature would have 4 fangs when it grew up, so Mao decided to keep it for now. At first, there were many people who came to see Xiao Xian, but gradually, the number of people decreased. After several hunts, less than 1/10 of the people came to see Xiao Xian to discuss the experience of raising a cub. The rest of the people ate the cub as they raised it. However, people in the tribe were new to raising animals, and there were many mistakes. Sometimes they could not control their strength, sometimes they were impatient, or their methods were wrong. Of course, not all cubs were suitable to become hound beasts. Even if their species were generally fierce, some individuals might have physical defects, or they might be more timid than others of their species, or even have other quirks. Even if they were trained, they might not be qualified. Although it was very difficult, and fewer people wanted to keep raising cubs, some people in the tribe still insisted. One day, after the shaman walked around the tribe, he called Xiao Xian for a talk. The shaman could not stand it anymore. It was a mess, and there were too many hidden dangers. He hoped to get a hunting beast that had both strength and loyalty, not a trader who only had strength and ferocity, but would bite the tribesmen when they grew up. The quality of the trained beast would be determined by the quality of the trained beast. After that, Xiao Xian found a suitable open space at the foot of the mountain and placed a large stone slab there as a drawing board. As long as he didn't go hunting, he would sit there every few days to explain. During the 2 days when the 2 hunting teams were alternating, he would also take some time to talk to the other hunting team. After all, once the hunt started, he would not be able to explain to the other hunting team. If you want them to learn what you're teaching, you have to give them commands and hand signals before pulling the straw rope during training. This way, they'll remember the commands and hand signals you give them. If you pulled the rope around their neck before you shouted out the command or made a gesture, their memory of the rope would be deeper than your command. Come on, Caesar, come and demonstrate. Here, just like this. Xiao Xian had seen more than once people in the tribe pull the cubs they brought back while shouting commands. Unfortunately, the training had little effect. I'll tell you a few methods. First, mechanical stimulation. To put it bluntly, you have to use certain methods to force them to do what you want them to do. For example, you want them to lie down in the grass. In order to prevent them from getting up and walking around, you can press them down with your hands. Through this method, you can make them lie down in the grass. After repeated training like this, they will form the correct action consciousness when they hear the command. As Xiao Xian was talking, a young warrior about his age held the cub he caught with one hand and said, "Just like this? You're not pressing them down, you're strangling them." Xiao Xian told them all the details of his plan. In addition, Xiao Xian also told them how to stimulate them with food and how to combine mechanical and reward training. For many people in the tribe, the food reward method was the most unacceptable. In their eyes, food was so precious that they couldn't even bear to part with it. In the past, when they caught these cubs, they would eat them directly. Now, they even had to share food with them? It was unacceptable. However, there were still some people who were willing to give up food, and most of them were young warriors. For example, Mo Air and Mao were very willing to give up food. Mo Air's current situation was similar to Xiao Xian's in the beginning. He moved out to live alone, and the family was not hungry. As for Mao, there were too many warriors in the family, and they never lacked food. It was not a problem for him to get some food to feed the cubs. Sometimes, when Xiao Xian was talking about imitation training, he would call Caesar over to demonstrate, so that the cubs could get along with Caesar more. Some of the cubs would do the same thing with Caesar. However, it was more difficult for Mo Air's cave lion and Mao's Sia. The former was unruly, while the latter was simply a glutton and a lazy worm. Mo Air's cave lion was named Mao, which was quite different from the lions Xiao Xian had seen in his last life. Most of the cave lions lived independently, in caves on the mountain, and did not hunt in groups. Because they often faced fierce big beasts such as cave bears, they were not weak, but difficult to tame. Both Mo Air and Mao had to spend more effort than others, and it depended on whether they had the patience. Days went by. In the tribe, fewer and fewer cubs were brought back, but the ones left grew up day by day. After Xiao Xian's explanation and demonstration, the young warriors gradually changed their training methods. Now, when walking in the tribe, it was common to see some young warriors with cubs. When they gathered together to chat, they would also bring their cubs with them. At first, they were all tied with straw ropes, but gradually, the ropes on some cubs' necks were removed. They did not run around, but followed the young warriors closely every time they went out. The reliance training was not for nothing. Sometimes, the young warriors from two hunting groups would compare themselves with each other to see who was more successful in raising their cubs. Some of the old warriors in the tribe, who had not hunted for many years, still had a worried mentality. They worried that the beasts in the tribe would come out to bite them when they slept at night. They were not optimistic about this method, and did not want their descendants to try it. Among them, some of the injuries on their bodies were caused by the ferocious beasts in the forest. Even if the beasts in the tribe were not very threatening, they were still very vigilant. When they got together with their old comrades, these old warriors would discuss to report to the team leaders or the chief, and see if they could persuade the young warriors in the tribe not to raise those beasts. However, the two team leaders had their own children, and the chief's grandson even raised a bald pig. It was said that the bald pig had eaten a lot of the herbs hidden by Ta. Look at Ta's face every day. It was as if he had been smeared with ash, but he still did not kill the bald pig. A group of old warriors was so anxious that their beards were almost falling off. They still could not think of a reasonable reason to kill those cubs, but the young warriors in the tribe were still actively raising them every day. When those old warriors were discussing in private, on the mountain, Ta was holding his stone knife tightly. He was so angry that blue veins stood out on his forehead. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. In front of him, his son's bald pig had eaten a bag of medicinal herbs that he had placed under the stone bench. That bag of medicinal herbs was actually insect repellent. If it was smoked, it could kill a large number of insects. However, the bald pig in front of him was not affected at all after eating it. It was still running and jumping around. How many times had it done this? This pig had been looking for food everywhere after it woke up. Its nose was also sensitive, and it could not hide things well. If it found something, it could not get it back. Maybe because it had eaten too much, Sia was now much stronger than other cubs in the tribe. It was not that Ta did not want to kill Sia, but he did not want to lose face. If he killed Sia, people on Gigu's side would definitely laugh at them for not being able to raise a pig well. So he had been holding back, and almost got internal injuries. "If you eat again, I will kill you," Ta said. Sia, who was chewing the herbs, looked up at Ta and shouted, Ta felt that this bald pig was really asking for a beating. How could Mao bring such a thing back? Thinking about how obedient Caesar was raised by Xiao Xian, he felt that this bald pig in front of him was a loser. Mao, who had just come back from the training ground, saw that his father was angry again, so he quickly carried Caesar out. "Tie it up for me. Use a thicker straw rope to tie it up, and don't let it out, or I will beat you to death." Ta shouted at Mao's back. Mao, who was running out quickly with Sia in his arms, thought, "It caused trouble, why should I be beaten?" Somewhere on the mountainside, with a cold face, Mo Air looked at the tattered animal skin on the bed, and then turned his head to look under the table against the wall. "Come out!" The ball hiding under the table shrunk inwards again. Mo Air held the knife handle, and thought, "Should I just kill it?" In the tribe, many people brought trouble because of raising cubs, but Xiao Xian did not have time to care about it now. While studying the ancient scroll of engraved secret skills, Xiao Xian found one thing. It was not the totem that played a leading role in his improvement, but another kind of power in his body. The egg-shaped thing that encircled the totem, or rather, the strange stone that brought him to this world. What exactly was it? Warriors said that the totem dominated the power in everyone's body, but Xiao Xian faintly felt that the totem in his mind could not go beyond that egg. No matter how active it was, when the flame on its horns was at its strongest, it could not go beyond that egg at all. The energy absorbed by the fire crystal was more like an auxiliary function. It could speed up the recovery, but could not improve, because the totem could not play the role of dominator. Putting down the animal skin scroll, Xiao Xian rubbed his eyebrows. What on earth is that stone for? At this time, Caesar came over with a wooden box in his mouth. The wooden box was tied with a straw rope, and Caesar bit the straw rope directly. In the wooden box, there were stone tools made by old Ka recently. Xiao Xian spent too much time studying the ancient scroll, so old Ka made some stone tools and asked Caesar to bring them over. Taking the wooden box, Xiao Xian patted Caesar's head. "We are going to set off again. Are you coming?" Caesar immediately took a step forward. "Yes." Xiao Xian rolled up the animal skin scroll and put it away. If there was no accompanying hunting dog, Then he would get an accompanying hunting wolf. Chapter 126. Ta's hunting team was about to set off again. The people in the tribe were used to seeing a different animal on the path of glory. So far, it was the only animal that could hunt with the team. At first, no one thought that Caesar could be so successful, and that he could follow the hunting team for several times in a row. Now there were 2 scars on Caesar's body. The wounds had healed, but the hair on the wounds had not grown back. The wounds looked very obvious. They were caused by an adult giant-clawed beast during one of the hunting trips. That time, the Xiaoxian was shocked. If Caesar had reacted a little slower, he would have been cut in half by the giant-clawed beast's claws. Later, when they returned to the tribe, the Xiaoxian planned to let Caesar rest a few more times. Unexpectedly, on the next hunting trip, Caesar took the initiative to follow them again, and the Xiaoxian could not drive him away. He liked to run in the forest, and he liked to hunt prey that were much bigger than him. Every time the hunting time approached, Caesar would be very excited. When he was recuperating, the Xiaoxian asked him to stay in the tribe, and the whole wolf became listless. Now the wounds were all healed, but the hair did not grow back. Mai and the others said that the hair around the 2 scars might not grow back. Just like the people in the tribe, the scars on the body were the proof of battle achievements, proving that they had faced prey that was stronger than them. Therefore, the scars on Caesar's body did not make people doubt Caesar's ability. On the contrary, they praised him. This time, before entering the forest, several team leaders talked for a short while, and one of them mentioned Caesar. The other 4 were very envious of Mai. Since they had Caesar, Mai and the others had several unexpected surprises. From the fire crystals at the beginning to some hard-to-find medicinal materials, they were all found by Caesar's wolf nose. In addition, when hunting, he could also help attack. How could they not be envious? By the way, Mai, you should pay attention to the ferocious beasts and wild animals in the hunting area. There may be some changes, said Chung. Speaking of changes, there seems to be some. The giant antler deer herd, the bison herd, and even the wolves seem to have changed. Mai also said, "What happened?" The other team leaders also asked curiously. After all, the forest was so big, and the hunting area was only a small part of it. Generally speaking, the wild beasts and ferocious beasts in the forest would not change their living area at will, unless the seasons changed. Most of the time, they would stay in their own territory to hunt. However, Chung Himai said that there were changes in the area where the wild beasts and ferocious beasts were active. This was unusual. Did something happen on your side again? One of the team leaders asked, referring to the strange bat incident at the beginning of the year. No, it's not. Chung shook his head. But it does have something to do with those bats. The bats had gone to take over a large territory. All the ferocious beasts on the mountain had been chased away, and the ferocious beasts that had left had to look for new territories. The battle had been going on until now. Coupled with the threat of the bats themselves, a large area of wild beasts and ferocious beasts in the surrounding area had changed. The birth of a powerhouse would cause a large-scale restructuring of the local power structure. In addition to the new mountain occupied by the bats, there were also changes in the giant pit. Chung planned to go to the giant pit again to see if he could dig out something, but when he went again, he could not enter. The giant pit, as well as the stone crevices and caves, were all filled with poisonous miasma. There used to be some sparse grass on the top of the mountain, but now it was all dead. The whole place looked gloomy and horrible. Did those bats go back? Mai asked. I don't know. I didn't see any bats there. Chung said, then they shouldn't. It's probably caused by the dead bats and other animals in the cave. A team leader said, hundreds of ferocious beasts and bats in the transformation period all died in there. They probably caused the formation of the poisonous miasma. The first 3 members of Cheng's team to go missing were sent back to the tribe and treated for a long time. It was obvious that the poisonous miasma was very powerful. Even if the others were unconscious, Xiaoxian quickly carried them out of the poisonous miasma area. They did not stay there for long. Knowing how powerful the miasma was, Chung did not dare to rush in with the others. He had to give up and ask the others to stay away. The mountain where the giant pit was located and the territory occupied by the bats were not on Mai's hunting route, but they would affect their hunting. Don't mess with those bats. Mai said. Of course I know. Chung understood, but he was not willing to give up and just complained. After entering the forest, the hunting groups split up. Mai led the others to the hunting area of the first stronghold to hunt. There was nothing different on the first day, but Mai also told the others in the hunting group to be careful during this period. There might be some ferocious beasts that had not appeared in this hunting area before. They should also pay attention to the changes in the herd. There was a giant antler deer herd in the hunting area of the first stronghold. Mai led the others there to hunt. Mai, have you noticed that we have not encountered the wolves that used to attack the giant antler deer herd several times? A middle-aged warrior in the hunting group said to Mai. Yes. Mai did not say anything. Caesar didn't encounter that pack of wolves during his first hunting trip. Everyone in the hunting group had been worried about what would happen if Caesar encountered that pack of wolves. However, they hadn't encountered any of them this year. The first time was because of an accident, and they left the hunting route. The second time, they only saw a few wolves from the original pack from afar, and those wolves didn't look so good at that time. Until now, they had not seen a single wolf, which was a bit strange. That pack of wolves should have appeared around the giant antler deer herd, but everyone be careful. Mai said, without the wolves to compete with them for the giant antler deer, every time the hunting group came, they would hunt a lot of giant antler deer. Whoosh, whoosh. Several spears appeared on 2 giant antler deer that were distracted by the appearance of Caesar. Lang Jie and the others dragged the 2 giant antler deer to the side and quickly dealt with them. They would bring them back later. Caesar jumped on the back of an old giant antler deer and bit its neck. However, compared to the giant antler deer, Caesar did not have much advantage in terms of size. Even though the giant antler deer was old, its strength was still not to be underestimated. After getting rid of Caesar, the giant antler deer ran away. Caesar could not catch up with it. After chasing for a while, he slowed down and looked at the deer that ran farther and farther away. Lang Jie and the others who were dealing with the prey had been paying attention to that side. The bitten giant antler deer had already run away, and only a small shadow could be seen. They were about to comfort Caesar. After all, Caesar had helped a lot during these hunting trips. He would not cause trouble like the cubs in the tribe. Everyone had a better impression of him, and was not so afraid of him. Just as they were about to say something, everyone's eyes froze. Lang Jie and the others stopped what they were doing. Especially Caesar, who was about to turn back. Unexpectedly, the moment before he turned back, he saw that the giant antler deer was bitten by a big wolf that suddenly jumped out. The huge impact made the giant antler deer stumble and fall. It struggled to stand up, but the reality did not give it a chance. Then the second, the third, a group of wolves surrounded the giant antler deer. Even from a distance, Lang Jie could see the bloody meat that was bitten and thrown out. Those wolves. Lang Jie had a bad feeling. They are not from the previous wolf group. Mai's face darkened. Every hunting team had a certain understanding of the prey and predators in their hunting area. The wolf group was an important part of that. Naturally, they knew which wolves were active in this area in the past. Although they were far away and could not see clearly, judging from the hunting style, they were not from the previous group. The wolves that appeared now were more cruel. They did not bite the giant antler deer to death directly, but bit and gnawed it to death. Caesar stared at the wolves in the distance. The skin on his nose wrinkled, and the fangs in his mouth were exposed. He also growled in a low voice. "Caesar, come back!" Xiao Xian shouted. Caesar was similar to the previous group of wolves here, but the wolves that appeared now were more dangerous. Caesar could not be allowed to touch them. Not to mention that he was outnumbered. Even if he fought alone, Caesar might not be able to win. The wolves were generally larger, and their style was quite ferocious. It would not be good for him to go there. Normally, when hunting, the warriors of the hunting team would not provoke the wolves. The wolves in the forest were very vengeful. Unless they were all killed, they had to be careful of their revenge. Since there was a new wolf group, the warriors of the hunting team did not stay for long. They hurried to leave with the prey. Anyway, it was late, and they had to go back to the cave. Caesar stopped looking. "Let's go." Xiao Xian saw Caesar was still looking back, so he shouted. After taking one last look at the wolves in the distance, Caesar followed Xiao Xian and ran back to the cave of the first stronghold. At night, the warriors were barbecuing meat and chatting in the cave. The entrance of the cave was blocked by a big stone, and the wind could only come in through some gaps and openings. Ever since the incident with the thorn-black wind, Mai had found this cave as his new base. While they were chatting, Mai suddenly stopped talking. The others also stopped talking and listened carefully. There was the sound of wolves howling. It was not very close, and people with bad hearing might not have noticed it. However, the warriors here had much better hearing than others. "Is it the same pack we saw during the day?" Tu whispered. Now Tu and Jeba had both joined Mai's hunting team. This was their third hunt. Their appearance did not change much, but their aura had changed a lot. They were no longer the two kids who lived in the cave and thought about what to eat the next day. They were real warriors. Be careful tomorrow. It's probably a new wolf group. As for the old ones, they must have been defeated. Mai said. There was an overlapping area between the territories of the wolf groups. It was possible to see wolves from two groups, but this was not their overlapping area. But now, the wolves at the foot of the mountain were openly showing their presence. Obviously, the old ones were either defeated or dead. While the others were talking about the new wolves, Caesar kept staring out of the cave. Noticing Caesar's look, Xiao Xian thought that he had to keep a close eye on this guy for a while. Chapter 127. The next day, the hunting group saw the pack of wolves in the giant antler deer's territory. Yesterday, they were too far away to see clearly, but today, they carefully observed the wolves. The wolves in this pack did not look much different, but they were bigger than the wolves in the previous packs, and their fur was also different. The fur of these wolves was patterned, and there were some darker spots near their backs. After coming to the forest, Xiao Xian had seen many wolves with different fur colors. According to Mai, there were some special packs, and the pattern was the symbol of their pack. If the pattern was different, it might be a foreign wolf, not a member of the original pack. Xiao Xian had never seen this pack of wolves before, but Xiao Xian had never seen it before. But it did not mean that Mai and the others had never seen it before. Why do I feel that this pack of wolves is very familiar? A warrior said. I think so too. I have seen this pattern before. We met them when we were hunting a cave bear at the edge of the hunting route. Mai recalled. At that time, they met a huge cave bear which was injured. It seemed that it had fought with other ferocious beasts, and Mai and the others took the opportunity to kill it. But even though the cave bear was injured, it was still very difficult to deal with. The hunting group chased it for a long time, until they were almost out of the hunting route and finally killed it. At that time, they happened to encounter a battle between two packs of wolves. One pack of wolves slaughtered another pack of wolves. It was a real cruel slaughter. Not only were the wolves bitten to death, but many of the dead wolves had been bitten and gnawed beyond recognition. The ground was covered with blood, and scavenger birds were hovering in the sky. When Mai led the hunting group to kill the cave bear, the slaughter was already over. Only a few wolves were still lingering around, dragging and biting the dead wolves on the ground. When the hunting group showed up, they were already full, and there were wounded wolves in the pack, so they were not in the mood to deal with the hunting group, and the leader of the pack left with the rest of the wolves. And it was there that Lang Jie picked up Caesar, who was still a cub at that time. Caesar was the only surviving wolf in the wolf pack that was completely slaughtered. Probably because he was playful at that time, he went a little further away. There was a steep slope not far from the wolf's den, and he rolled down the slope. At that time, the wolves guarding the den might have noticed the appearance of other wolves. They were only focused on being vigilant and did not pay attention to Caesar until the end of the massacre. When Mai brought people over, Caesar, who had rolled down the slope and was lying under a rock, had just woken up from his coma. He kept howling, and only then did Lang Jie notice him. Otherwise, if he didn't make a sound, no one would have noticed him under the cover of the rocks, tall grass, and steep slope. Fortunately, the other wolf pack did not deliberately search for the scent of the pups at the edge of the steep slope. I remember, when I picked up Caesar, he was only this big. Lang Jie raised his hand and gestured. He even wanted to bite me with his teeth that were not fully grown yet. Recalling the past, Lang Jie and the others could not help but smile. Caesar was indeed not big at that time. But soon, everyone's heart sank. Obviously, those who had witnessed the massacre together with Mai and Lang Jie were not happy about it. It was not that they were sentimental. As warriors who had hunted in this forest for many years, they had seen many such battles. Moreover, as hunting warriors, who had not killed wild beasts and ferocious beasts. Could soft-hearted people survive here? It was impossible. The reason why they felt uncomfortable was that when they thought of that scene, they knew how cruel that wolf pack was. It could even be counted as torture. Unless you kill them all, otherwise don't mess with those guys, especially you guys. I looked at the new members and said. Everyone nodded quickly. There were new members in the hunting team this year. As new members, it was easy for them to attract the attention of the carnivorous wild beasts and ferocious beasts in the forest. They loved to attack the weak. What Xiao Xian had experienced, they had to experience it again. Xian, keep an eye on Caesar. I whispered to Xiao Xian. I know. Xiao Xian had the same idea. After that, during the hunt, Xiao Xian kept an eye on Caesar. Seeing that Caesar was still the same as usual, he was relieved. After killing a giant clawed beast, several people in the hunting team began to deal with the prey. Lang Jie checked the surrounding traps and asked Xiao Xian to help him fix them. The auxiliary role of traps could not be ignored. Seeing that Caesar was lying not far away, Xiao Xian walked over to help Lang Jie fix the traps. Lang Jie, when you picked up Caesar, did he see the miserable situation of the wolf pack? Xiao Xian asked. Lang Jie thought carefully. Yes, I did. I picked him up from the bottom of the slope and put him on the ground. He sniffed around and howled. He even bit the 2 dead wolves with spots on them. His little teeth were not fully grown, so he could not even bite through the wolf's skin. After slaughtering 1 wolf pack, the other wolf pack was not completely unscathed. They lost 2 wolves. However, compared to Caesar's wolf pack, which was almost completely wiped out, this was nothing. The wolves with spots on their fur were very strong. Compared to other wolves, they had a stronger bite force. They were ferocious and often killed other wolf packs and attacked other beast packs. Seeing Xiao Xian frown, Lang Jie smiled and said, You're not worried that Caesar will hold a grudge, are you? How old was he at that time? That's impossible. As he spoke, Lang Jie looked up at Caesar, who was not far away. Seeing that he was looking at them, Lang Jie lowered his head and continued to fix the traps. Every time they fixed the traps, Caesar would lie down not far away and watch Lang Jie and Xiao Xian fix the traps. I didn't expect you to keep him. I was going to cook soup for you. When he thought about how Caesar had almost been cooked, Lang Jie could not help but feel happy and emotional. Xiao Xian was listening to Lang Jie describe what he had seen when he suddenly heard a cry of alarm. Alert! Everyone be careful. It's a wolf pack. Xiao Xian suddenly stood up and looked around. Caesar, who had been lying there just now, was gone. I nervously paid attention to the movements of the wolves. The pack of wolves had already formed an encirclement, but soon, I discovered that Caesar had rushed out. He did not fight directly, but instead, he took a bite of the wolf at the side and ran away. I could feel that the wolves had originally wanted to attack them, but their target was not Caesar. However, after seeing Caesar, the wolves hesitated for a moment. Under the command of the alpha wolf, they changed their target and chased after Caesar. During normal hunting, Caesar would help attract the attention of the prey, but that was all planned. The prey was not such a threatening wolf pack. Why would Caesar suddenly rush out? Xian, hurry up and call Caesar back. I quickly looked around and did not see Xiao Xian's figure. His face turned green. Where's Xian? Lang Jie jumped out from the tall grass, panting. I didn't catch him. He had seen Xiao Xian leave just now, so he immediately chased after him. He wanted to stop him, but unexpectedly, he was left behind after a short distance. He could not even find his shadow, so he had to go back first. That guy, he's too fast. Lang Jie had never thought that he would lose his target so soon, even though he was already a mid-level totem warrior and could move fast in the team. I took a deep breath and then looked at the young warriors. You go back to the cave first. Chow, take them away. After that, I led the warriors into the woods and went in the direction that Lang Jie had pointed out. On the other side, Xiao Xian followed the traces on the ground and chased after Xiao Xian. Caesar had probably discovered the wolves' movement before so he moved very quickly. Perhaps he had been waiting for an opportunity, or he would not have rushed out so decisively. After all, Xiao Xian had been a little late, so now he could not see the wolves at all. He could only follow the traces on the ground and around. He had not noticed it before, but now he realized that these wolves were really fast. Xiao Xian was worried. Caesar had almost no chance of winning against the wolves, and the probability of him escaping was not high. Lang Jie said that Caesar did not hold grudges, but Xiao Xian believed that Caesar remembered. As for how much he remembered, Xiao Xian did not know. While chasing, Xiao Xian looked in the direction where the wolves were running, and he had an idea. In the middle of the first and second strongholds, there was a remote area near the mountains. Usually there were not many ferocious beasts going there, but there Lang Jie and Xiao Xian had set up a trap belt together. When hunting, they might encounter some trouble, and these traps in remote areas were to deal with such situations, in case of emergency. If they encountered some ferocious beasts or wild beasts that were difficult to deal with, the hunters would run towards the trap belt and let the traps hinder the ferocious beasts, so that the hunters would have more time to escape. In the past, the traps were mainly set up by Lang Ga. Later, when they were mending them, Xiao Xian and Lang Jie studied them together and made some improvements. Because they were designed to guard against ferocious beasts, they were naturally designed with the ability to injure or even kill. These traps had to be checked every time they went hunting. This time, they came to check them on the first day, and Caesar watched them mending them. Wherever the wolves passed, many wild beasts would avoid them. Some ferocious beasts were also afraid of causing trouble, so they avoided them. This also made it easier for Xiao Xian to catch up. In the direction of the trap belt, there were already screams. Xiao Xian sped up again. When Xiao Xian arrived at the trap belt, what he saw was a sunken pit. There were thorns in the pit, and a wolf was lying in it. The thorns inside did not pierce through it, but as it struggled, the thorns pierced deeper and deeper, causing more and more blood to flow out. The thorns were smeared with a kind of grass juice with an anesthetic effect. As the thorns pierced deeper, its struggling became weaker and weaker. If no one pulled it out, it would not be long before it died. Xiao Xian did not care about it, and went straight through it. Not far from the pit, a wolf was hung in the air by its neck. The more it struggled, the tighter the rope became. This kind of rope was also specially soaked in the blood of wild beasts and grass juice, and was very strong. The wolf hung in the air could only struggle. It wanted to bite off the rope, but it failed again and again. When Xiao Xian saw it, its neck was already a little deformed. When Xiao Xian passed by, he gave it a stab. The wolf hung in the air, no longer moving. Not only were there pits and nooses, but there were also nets, knife stakes, and a series of other traps. Every once in a while, Xiao Xian would see a wolf that was dead or still struggling. There were spots on their backs. Xiao Xian chased them all the way, and stabbed them all the way. If there was no time to deal with them, he directly threw spear darts or stone needles. Even if they did not die, they could still injure them. Chapter 128. The range of the trap zone was not too large, but there were many wolves trapped there. Xiao Xian saw at least 7 wolves trapped or dead in the traps. Obviously, when the wolves were chasing after Caesar, they did not expect that Caesar would bring them to such a place. When Caesar ran here, they did not have time to react. Seeing that nothing happened to Caesar, they naturally did not think that there were so many hidden dangers here. Normally, there would not be so many wolves trapped. There were many experienced animals in the forest, and their intuition could provide them with preliminary judgment. Naturally, there were also wolves with rich hunting experience. Today was just an accident, and they were chasing closely, so they did not think too much. After passing through the trap zone, Xiao Xian continued to follow the tracks. Not far from the trap zone, there was a natural asphalt pit. This was also the largest asphalt pit on the hunting route of the first stronghold. Every day, many animals, both terrestrial and flying, would be trapped in it. Xiao Xian once saw a cow trapped in it. The cow could not break free, and it attracted many carnivores. As a result, all of them were swallowed by the asphalt pit. No one knew how many skeletons were buried in the asphalt pit. There was also a small asphalt pit near the tribe. Xiao Xian once saw people take asphalt from there to build roofs, but for safety reasons, the tribe often had people in charge of guarding there. In the large asphalt pit in front of him, Xiao Xian saw 2 wolves trapped in it. 1/3 of their legs had sunk in, and they were struggling futilely. If no one pulled them out, they would gradually sink into the pit and accompany the animals that had been trapped for thousands of years or even longer. There, they would not be eaten by scavengers, and their bones would be well preserved. In the distant future, their bones might see the light of day again, but it was also possible that they would be buried forever. Generally speaking, smart animals would not come close to this place. Those that came close were either not very smart, new, or greedy predators. In this asphalt pit zone, it looked dark, but in fact, not every part of it would sink. The hunting team was more familiar with this place, and had passed through it before. Sometimes, in order to avoid some troublesome ferocious beasts or groups of wild animals, they would take refuge here. The passage was very narrow, and large ferocious beasts could not pass through it. Xiao Xian brought Caesar here once, and did not expect it to remember it. There were its footprints and some other wolves' footprints. Caesar was not the only one who was smart. However, there were still 2 wolves trapped in it. The wolves had just come to this land, and were not familiar with it. They might have seen asphalt pits in their former territory, and only knew that it was dangerous, which was their natural alertness. Here, they did not know where they could go, and where they could not go. Xiao Xian saw some footprints around the asphalt pit, and those that did not follow Caesar's route were trapped in it. It would take too much time to take a detour, so Xiao Xian directly went through the asphalt pit zone, and did not pay attention to the 2 wolves that were trapped deeper and deeper. From some traces, it could be seen that Caesar had left most of the wolves behind, and trapped nearly 10 of them, through the previous trap zone and the asphalt pit zone. The wolf pack, which had about 30 members, was reduced by 1/3 in a short time. If the alpha wolf was timid, it probably would not continue to chase, but obviously, the wolves in this pack were all ferocious and very vengeful, and kept chasing. Until now, there were only about 3 or 4 wolves that were chasing closely. Most of them did not keep up, and Xiao Xian had encountered a few along the way. Following Xiao Xian, Caesar learned a lot of tricks to trap people and beasts, such as traps, asphalt pits, and how to run into the territory of ferocious beasts and transfer the hatred to the wolves that were chasing closely behind. The only thing this new pack of wolves lacked was their unfamiliarity with this place. However, Xiao Xian was worried that Caesar might be injured. As he followed along, he saw blood on the ground. The blood could be from the wolves, or it could be from Caesar. Xiao Xian needed to find him as soon as possible and confirm his injury. While running, Xiao Xian suddenly heard a loud roar in the forest ahead. Many birds that were resting in the forest flapped their wings and flew up, and some small animals ran out. A giant bear. Besides that, Xiao Xian also heard the howling of wolves. It was not Caesar's howling, but the howling of the wolves from the other pack. There was a giant bear with them, and it was much more difficult to deal with than the 4-fanged boar. It looked clumsy, but it ran very fast. The hunting team had been avoiding it from a distance. In the past, the hunting team had encountered the giant bear several times, and were chased by it. Whenever they encountered it, the hunting team would run towards the asphalt pit. However, the giant bear was not stupid. Every time it chased them to the edge of the asphalt pit, it would stop moving forward, and then slowly walk around the asphalt pit. When it walked, it would roar at the hunting team and stare at them fiercely, as if it was telling them, "Sooner or later, I will eat you." But now, in order to deal with the wolves, Caesar had provoked the giant bear. If he was not careful, he would get himself into trouble. Xiao Xian's face changed, and he hurried towards the bear. The giant bear was still roaring. Soon, Xiao Xian saw the giant figure standing up, with its mouth wide open, showing its sharp teeth, and roaring towards a place on the ground. Following the giant bear's sight, Xiao Xian saw 4 wolves. The obviously bigger one was the alpha of the pack. These 4 wolves were the only ones that had chased Xiao Xian to this place. Some of the wolves were trapped in the asphalt pit, and some had not caught up. Among the 4 wolves, 3 of them, including the alpha, had blood stains around their mouths. After looking around, Xiao Xian did not see Caesar. Beside the giant bear, there was a wolf with a spotted pattern on its back, but its neck had been bitten off by the giant bear. The alpha wolf did not seem to want to give up. It bared its teeth and growled at the giant bear. This made the giant bear, which was the king of this area, immediately angry. Usually, it was very annoyed by hunting groups that came to its territory to hunt. Every time, it could not catch up with anyone, so it was very angry. This time, it did not see anyone, but it saw these strange wolves. It should be known that the wolves that lived in this area did not dare to come to its territory and be arrogant. With another roar, the giant bear vented its anger. Seeing that the situation was not good, the alpha wolf had to give up the chase. It turned around and ran, and the other 3 wolves quickly followed. The giant bear, on all 4s, chased after the alpha wolf. Xiao Xian knew the bear's temper. It would probably chase for a while before it returned. Seeing that the wolves and the giant bear had left, Xiao Xian jumped down from the tree and carefully identified the smell in the air. There were a few prey that the giant bear had hunted here. The smell of blood was very strong, and some scavengers began to move again. Xiao Xian looked around and changed his vision. The surrounding green vegetation disappeared, and all he could see were stones, faint silhouettes of trees, and some animal skeletons. His vision stopped at one place, and Xiao Xian quickly walked there. Changing back to his normal vision, Xiao Xian came to a plant with large leaves. Under the large leaves, blood flowed out. Pushing the leaves aside, Xiao Xian saw Caesar lying under the leaves. Caesar's condition was very bad. When he used his special vision, Xiao Xian found that there were several fractures on its body. In addition to the fractures, there were also some bite wounds. 2 of them were very deep, and large pieces of meat had been bitten off. Blood kept flowing out. There was also blood flowing out of Caesar's mouth. Its internal organs were probably damaged as well. Xiao Xian quickly took out a bag of herbs. Inside were some herbs that had been ground into powder. He sprinkled it on Caesar's wounds. After the powder was sprinkled, it was quickly soaked in blood. This couldn't go on. In his previous life, such a situation would have been immediately sent to the emergency room. However, in this kind of place, other than the limited amount of herbs he had on him, Xiao Xian had no other choice. If this continued, Caesar would soon stop breathing. Xiao Xian could feel that Caesar's breathing had become difficult. Sensing Xiao Xian's arrival, Caesar opened its eyes and moved. It wanted to get up, but Xiao Xian quickly stopped it. "Hey buddy, don't move. You're injured." It was only a slight movement, but the blood that had just slowed down flowed out again. Along with the powder, it dripped onto the ground. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Caesar no longer struggled to get up. It lay on the ground, but it moved its head and used its nose to touch Xiao Xian's hand. It even let out a whimper. Don't cry." Xiao Xian raised his hand and gently patted Caesar's head. Although Caesar didn't cry, Xiao Xian could see the sadness in its eyes. It probably knew that its condition wasn't good. They couldn't just wait here. Should they carry Caesar back to the cave? That was impossible. Caesar's injuries were too serious. It couldn't withstand the jolts, and it might not be able to last that long. Looking around, Xiao Xian took out a bag of herbs. It wasn't for external application. There were some leaves inside. Xiao Xian put it in Caesar's mouth. It just closed its mouth and didn't have the strength to chew. Xiao Xian quickly crushed the herbs with the back of his knife and poured them into a gourd filled with water. Then, he mixed it with water and poured some into Caesar's mouth. He didn't know how effective these herbs would be for Caesar, but he had to try. After feeding Caesar the medicine, Xiao Xian patted Caesar's head and said, "Hang in there, buddy. I'll be back soon." He put down the big leaf again to cover Caesar's figure. The scavenging birds and beasts wouldn't notice them for a while. The giant bear still had a lot of food left. Xiao Xian found a few sticks and vines to make a simple stretcher. Then he came back and put Caesar on it. He carried the stretcher and walked away. There was a very large tree nearby. Xiao Xian planned to put Caesar up the tree first. The giant bear would be back soon. They couldn't stay in the same place for too long. Moreover, the sky was gradually darkening. It was relatively safer in the tree. He found a long and sturdy vine and tied it to the stretcher. Xiao Xian stood on a branch of the tree. He wrapped the other end of the vine around another branch above his head and pulled Caesar's stretcher up. Just as Xiao Xian pulled Caesar up the tree, the giant bear that was chasing the wolves had returned to its original place. Seeing a group of scavenging birds and beasts fighting over its prey, the giant bear roared angrily and rushed over. It tore a few beasts that couldn't escape in time into pieces. The surrounding birds and beasts scattered in an instant. After confirming that there were no other birds and beasts nearby, the giant bear continued to eat. Chapter 129. The light of the sun gradually disappeared, and 2 moons appeared in the sky above the forest. Some nocturnal animals gradually came out, and most of the birds flew back to their nests. There were many bird nests above the branch Xiao Xian was on, but Xiao Xian would not take the initiative to provoke those birds. These birds did not look big and looked quite pleasant, but in fact, they were very dangerous. If it was a seriously injured animal or a recently dead animal, they would swarm over and start a feast. There were birds fighting above, and a bird fell from its nest and landed on the branch Xiao Xian was standing on. Turning over and shaking its wings, the bird looked at Xiao Xian. At night, its vision was not good, but its sense of smell was very sensitive. It smelled the blood on Caesar's body, and also felt that Caesar was weak. The bird, which was about to shake its wings and fly back to its nest, changed its mind and rushed in Caesar's direction. Some fine, sharp teeth could be seen in its open mouth, and the edges of its beak were serrated. With each bite, a piece of meat would be scraped off. When the bird flew over, Xiaoxian quickly took a step forward and stabbed with his right hand, holding the stone knife. The bird, which was excited by the smell of blood and completely ignored Xiaoxian, suddenly felt the dark clouds of death rise in its heart. In the next moment, Xiaoxian's stone knife penetrated the bird's body. Without looking at the bird again, Xiaoxian swung his arm and threw the bird on the stone knife to the tree trunk. At the end of the branch, there was a hole in the trunk, and the hole was emitting a sparkling green light. When Xiaoxian threw the bird over, a mouth instantly opened at the entrance of the tree hole and swallowed the bird directly, then retracted back into the hole. The sparkling green light continued to flash, attracting some nocturnal insects to fly here and eat them. It was a kind of tree worm that lived in trees. During the day, it looked no different from other worms, but at night, its body would emit fluorescent light to hunt for food. There were still many birds watching from the tree. If Caesar was left here alone, he would be reduced to bones in a few minutes. These birds were just not active at night, but they would still move and eat. They would not let go of any weak animals. Xiaoxian did not sleep. In the forest at night, even if he stayed in the trees, it was only a little safer. There were still many dangers in the trees, so he had to be vigilant at all times. When Xiaoxian was looking for vines to make a stretcher, he found a few herbs and gave them to Caesar. However, the effect was not good. As time passed, Caesar's condition was still deteriorating. After all, Caesar was not a totemic warrior. If he had the recovery ability of a totemic warrior, he would be able to hold on for a while. Many totemic warriors could hold on until they were sent to the tribe. However, Caesar was just an ordinary wolf. His congenital condition determined that he could not become a stronger beast or even a ferocious beast in a short period of time. In terms of physical fitness, he was not even comparable to most of the wolves in the new wolf pack. His recovery ability was limited. Xiaoxian could not change this. Thinking of this, Xiaoxian could not help but sigh in his heart, feeling a little sad. After all, he had not been in this world for long before he started to raise Caesar. More than 2 years thinking of this, Xiaoxian suddenly froze. Recovery? Yes, recovery. Caesar's recovery ability was not impossible to change. As long as Caesar could turn from an ordinary beast into a ferocious beast, even if he could not become a ferocious beast, as long as his overall ability was improved, he could last longer. And one way to turn Caesar from an ordinary beast into a ferocious beast in a short period of time was the secret engraving technique recorded in the ancient scroll. According to the ancient teachings, the target who used the secret engraving technique had strict requirements. As for Caesar, first, he could follow the hunting, and second, his loyalty was good. Even if he did not completely meet the requirements of the ancestors, Xiaoxian decided to give it a try. Xiaoxian was not absolutely sure about the secret engraving technique, so he had not used it on Caesar. But now, except for this, there was no other choice. If he tried, he could fail or succeed. If he failed, Caesar would not see the sun tomorrow. If he succeeded, Caesar would live. But if he did not try, Caesar would definitely die. Hey, buddy, Xiaoxian touched Caesar's wolf head. There is a way to save you. If it succeeds, you will become more powerful, and you may even become a ferocious beast. If it fails, you can only say goodbye to this world. Caesar opened his eyes and wanted to touch Xiaoxian's hand with his nose, but he had no strength. He could only open his eyes and look at Xiaoxian. Gusts of night wind blew, and the branches swayed. Some weak moonlight penetrated through the gaps between the leaves and shone into Caesar's eyes. The reflected light made the wolf's eyes look a little scary, like 2 flashing lights. In the forest, many animals' eyes at night looked like this. Xiaoxian was not afraid. He raised his hand and touched Caesar's wolf head. Okay, as long as you agree. Hold on, buddy. Old Ku is still waiting at home. There are still a bunch of cubs in the tribe waiting for you to teach them a lesson. Without you, they may not last long and will be cooked. And the wolves that killed your tribe are still alive. Do you want to continue taking revenge? The engraving secret technique was not only the will of the caster, but also the will of the receiver. If the receiver was willing to accept it, the success rate would be higher. If there was a conflict between the two, the possibility of failure would be higher. Even if it succeeded, the effect would not be good. The ferocious beasts created might rebel. This was also why the ancestors would rather choose fewer ferocious beasts and choose the most loyal of them. Caesar's current state was not good for the engraving secret technique, but in order to increase the possibility of success, Xiao Xian wanted to arouse his desire to live. The potential in a desperate situation was unpredictable. That was why there were sayings such as fighting back and being reborn from the ashes. After a few words with Caesar, Xiao Xian did not delay any longer. While Caesar was still awake, he started. He made a simple fence with wrought tan to prevent other small beasts from interfering. Xiao Xian did not know what kind of changes the engraving secret technique would cause, but here he was willing to take the risk. Handing the stone knife to his left hand, Xiao Xian squatted down and stretched out his right hand in front of Caesar. Carefully recalling the records in the ancient scroll and his daily practice, Xiao Xian began to mobilize the power of inheritance in his body. In the sea of consciousness, at the bottom of the totem flame, near the two horns, the blue flame gradually increased, and a trace of blue separated from it. At the same time, under Xiao Xian's right palm, the trace of blue began to form the shape of two horns. It was not just a flat figure, but a three-dimensional totem shape, far smaller than the one in the tribe's fire pit. It was only the size of a walnut. The two horns gradually formed. When the engraving was completed, some blue flames began to gather around the horns. Then, above the blue flames, a red flame began to appear. During this process, Xiao Xian did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. The slightest mistake could cause the engraving to fail and the totem to scatter. When the red flame finally appeared and stabilized, Xiao Xian was slightly relieved. This proved that the engraving of the totem by the power of inheritance was successful. But this was only the beginning. After the engraving, it was time for the imprinting. After the totem was completed, Xiao Xian moved his palm and pressed it on Caesar's forehead. The totem moved with Xiao Xian's hand. When it touched Caesar's forehead, it did not immediately imprint. Xiao Xian felt resistance in his hand, but he was not worried. According to the ancient scroll, there would be a lot of resistance in the process of imprinting. After all, he was not a member of the tribe, not even a human. Naturally, there would be some resistance. Without stopping, Xiao Xian continued to slowly imprint the totem. He could not rush, but he could not be too slow either. He had to control his own speed. The ancient scroll did not explain it clearly, so Xiao Xian could only rely on his intuition. As Xiao Xian's palm pressed down, the two-horned totem was slowly imprinted on Caesar's forehead. With his palm on Caesar's forehead, Xiao Xian did not immediately withdraw his hand after completely imprinting the totem. Instead, he helped to guide the flow of totem power in Caesar's body. Caesar still had consciousness, so he began to follow Xiao Xian's guidance and began to mobilize this new power. It knew what this was. Every year at the end of winter, when the tribe held a sacrificial ceremony, it would feel this power. However, the difference was that it had avoided this power the last 2 times, but now it felt close to it. When Caesar's consciousness began to take control, Xiao Xian withdrew his hand. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he looked around. If there had been a beast or a ferocious beast, he would have failed. Fortunately, there was no movement for now. Looking at Caesar lying on the branch, Xiao Xian could only help here. In the secret technique of engraving, this was all he could do. The rest was up to Caesar. If he could master and accept this power, he would have succeeded. If he could not, he would not be able to hold on for long with such injuries. Soon, Xiao Xian noticed that Caesar was trembling. The more he shook, the more his whole body began to twitch. Puff! Caesar spat out blood directly onto Xiao Xian's body. Crack! 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 With the crisp sound of bones, Caesar's whole body swelled up. It was only his bones that held it up. His fur clung to his bones, making him look like a bag of bones. What happened? Xiao Xian looked at the scene in front of him in shock. The ancient scroll did not mention such a reaction. It only said that after the hounds and totems merged successfully, they would grow into beasts that were stronger than other beasts in a short period of time. The stronger ones would even become ferocious beasts. But the short period of time mentioned in the ancient scroll did not mean a few minutes or hours, but dozens of days. But now, after only a few minutes of engraving, Caesar's body began to change. Xiao Xian did not know if it was the same as what the ancestors said. There were no detailed records of this. Xiao Xian had been paying attention to Caesar's condition. The broken bones had reformed and were bigger. He did not know how the internal injuries were. The 2 wounds on his body that had lost large chunks of flesh had stopped bleeding. One of the wounds could even be seen protruding bone. Although the changes in front of him were beyond Xiao Xian's expectations and were different from what the ancestors said in the ancient scroll, Xiao Xian could feel that Caesar's vitality was getting stronger. Although the process was not as obvious as the changes on the surface, it was indeed a good sign. Above, the birds that had been watching Xiao Xian and Caesar, waiting for an opportunity to sneak attack, shrank back into their nests and hid. They no longer looked down and pretended to be quails. In the tree hole, the glowing green tree worm also crawled into the depths of the hole. Even the fluorescence on its body had dimmed. Chapter 130. It was a peaceful night. A few ferocious beasts passed by under the tree quietly. They probably smelled the blood on Caesar's body, so they glanced at the tree, but did not do anything threatening. Instead, they swaggered away. The tree worm did not come out from the tree hole. Even when some flying insects flew to the tree hole, it did not stick out its head or open its mouth. Xiao Xian guessed that it might be because of the engraving technique. Just like when the tribe held a ceremony, other animals would stay away from it. Even though the fire seed did not spread, it seemed that it was not a coincidence that no wild beasts or ferocious beasts attacked. Even so, Xiao Xian did not dare to be careless. He kept watch for the whole night. In the morning, the 2 moons gradually disappeared in the morning sun. The birds in the tree had already started to chirp cha-cha. When Yangguang shone through the leaves, the birds in the nest above Xiao Xian's head had already disappeared. The wounds on Caesar's body had stopped bleeding, and the bite wounds had already scabbed over. It looked a little scary, but in fact, it was much better. Caesar, who was lying on the tree branch, was breathing steadily. He had not woken up yet. Listening to his breathing that was getting stronger, Xiao Xian was relieved for the time being. He also checked the broken bones in Caesar's body. They had all recovered, and there was not even a trace of fracture. Was this the benefit of the engraving technique? Xiao Xian waited for a while on the tree and listened carefully. He heard the sound of a wooden whistle. It should be the hunting team. He quickly took out his wooden whistle and blew it according to the rhythm. It sounded like the chirping of birds in the forest. Not long after, Mai came over with some people. Xian. Mai was relieved when he saw Xiao Xian standing on the tree. Mai was shocked when he saw Caesar lying there. How did he get hurt like this? Mai was stunned before he finished his words. Something was not right. This is. Mai pointed at Caesar, who was lying there. He stuttered as he spoke, his eyes filled with disbelief. This is Caesar? Lang Jie leaned forward to take a closer look. You didn't seem so big yesterday. Why do I feel like you've grown up in just one night? The few people who came with Mai also nodded repeatedly, their eyes constantly sweeping over Caesar. It was injured yesterday, so it changed a little, Xiao Xian said. This isn't just a small change, Lang Jie mumbled. However, now was not the time to dwell on this. They had to leave here quickly and return to the cave. Mai and his men did not return home for the entire night. They had spent the night outside and probably could not fall asleep. They had been vigilant the entire night and continued their search when the sun rose. They did not sleep at all. Seeing the obvious fatigue on their faces, Xiao Xian felt very apologetic. I'm sorry, Xiao Xian said. Mai waved his hand. Let's go back first. Although he really wanted to beat up Xiao Xian here, the most important thing was to go back first. The people waiting in the cave probably did not sleep at all. As Caesar was still unconscious, Xiao Xian used the stretcher from yesterday to slowly lower Caesar from the tree. The stretcher they used yesterday was just right. Today, when they placed Caesar on it, the stretcher seemed much smaller. Most of his head and tail were hanging off the edge of the stretcher. Mai and the others were below. After the stretcher was lowered, they said, He's much heavier. He's bigger and thinner, a middle-aged man next to Mai whispered. Caesar was usually well-fed. Even when he went hunting, he had never lost weight. He was not like the wild beasts in the forest who were always hungry and did not know their next meal. But now, Caesar looked like a bag of bones. It was a little scary. With the help of Mai and the others, Xiao Xian was much more relaxed. He directly carried Caesar back with the stretcher. In the cave of the first stronghold, the others did not sleep well. Qiao waited at the entrance of the cave all night. Everyone was very anxious. Seeing that Mai and Xiao Xian were all back and no one was missing, she heaved a sigh of relief. We're finally back safely. Qiao looked at the people who came back, and then carefully looked at Xiao Xian. Seeing that Xiao Xian was not injured, she smiled. "I'm sorry to have worried everyone," Xiao Xian said. "It was indeed his fault for leaving the team without permission. It's good that you're back safely." Xiao was about to ask about what happened yesterday when she saw the stretcher. Her first reaction was that something had happened to Caesar. Her second reaction was that something was wrong. "Let's go in first." Mai carried the stretcher back to the cave. Xiao Xian settled Caesar down and asked for some medicine to treat external injuries for Caesar. While changing the medicine, Xiao Xian briefly told everyone what happened after he left. The people around were stunned, especially Lang Ga swallowing his saliva. Lang Jie still could not believe it. Trap zone? Caesar led the wolves to the trap zone. He did not feel pity for the traps that he had set, but he was shocked that Caesar could do such a thing. He even knew how to use traps to trick his opponents. Not only that, there was also the asphalt pit. Ong, who was standing next to Lang Jie, could not help but scratch his arm. He always felt that the hair on his arm was trembling, and he was very nervous. Ever since they started hunting, they always thought that only people could use traps to trick wild beasts and ferocious beasts. Who knew that wild beasts could also use traps and natural environmental factors to trick their opponents? If this was in the past, they would never have imagined it. Then Caesar's appearance is... He mutated, Xiao Xian said. To some extent, Caesar's change was indeed a mutation. Mutation. Lang Jie did not quite understand this word. In other words, Caesar may change from a wild beast to something closer to a ferocious beast, or even directly become a ferocious beast, Xiao Xian explained simply and straightforwardly. Everyone's jaws almost hit the ground. A wild beast in the team was enough to make them discuss for a long time. Now, Xiao Xian told them that this wild beast had become a ferocious beast. That was a ferocious beast. This was a huge leap in level. Were they going to hunt with ferocious beasts in the future? Listening to this, they were so nervous but also excited. It's hard to say now. Let's wait until Caesar wakes up and see, Xiao Xian said. Well, I guess everyone didn't rest well yesterday. Let's rest today and go hunting tomorrow, Mai said. Xiao Xian lay down next to Caesar, leaning against the cave wall. When no one was paying attention, he took out the fire crystal that the shaman had given him from the animal skin bag. Last night, in order to use the secret engraving technique, he had consumed a lot of totem power. During the engraving, he had to maintain a high level of concentration, and after the engraving, he had to continue to be vigilant. At that time, he was too tired, so Xiao Xian grabbed the fire crystal and used it to replenish his energy. The originally fiery red fire crystal's color was a little lighter and not obvious, but Xiao Xian could see it. Just this slight change was enough for at least 3 people to absorb the energy emitted by the fire crystal. He did not expect that he had consumed so much energy unknowingly. The secret engraving technique consumed a lot of energy, so he had to be more careful in the future. When Xiao Xian and the others were resting in the cave, Mai did not go to sleep immediately, but led them to the trap area. There were indeed several wolf corpses in the trap area, but they had been eaten by other beasts and scavengers. Most of the corpses were just bloody skeletons. After such a long time, the smell of blood had already attracted some surrounding animals. Naturally, there were no intact corpses left. It's true. Xiao opened his eyes wide and carefully checked several traps that had been set. Xian didn't lie. Well, Caesar really understood. Not only Qiao Mai and his wife, but also the others who came with them, all thought of the cubs left in the tribe. If they became like Caesar in the future, Mai, that will be a great help. Qiao said, a help that may change the entire hunting team. Everyone was still a little worried. If those cubs grew up in the future, would they be harmful to the tribe? But on second thought, since the shaman had agreed, it was naturally a good thing. Everyone's thoughts were simple. Even if they had other ideas, if the shaman said it was okay, then it was absolutely right. Well, they just had to believe in the shaman. After thinking it through, Mai and the others felt much more relaxed. The others even urged Mai to catch 2 cubs for Yang Guang and his sister, so that they could ask Xiao Xian to help train them. Mai did not say yes, but also did not say no. At night, everyone gathered around the fire and discussed the cubs in the tribe in the future. Suddenly, Caesar, who was lying next to Xiao Xian, moved. Lang Jie, who was closest to Xiao Xian, also felt it and immediately went over. Hey, Caesar is waking up? Lang Jie was about to take a closer look, but when he lowered his head, he saw Caesar's wolf eyes open, and he paused. Lang Jie felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and a chill rushed from his back to his head. The muscles all over his body tightened, and the smile on his face froze instantly. The veins on his arms stood out, and he forced himself not to pull out his stone knife and cut Caesar. Those eyes were filled with killing intent, cruelty, and coldness. Lang Jie saw such eyes every day in the forest. "What's wrong?" The others gathered around. Lang Jie opened his mouth and was about to tell the others to stay away. But soon he found that the emotions in those eyes had changed. They became much softer, and when he looked again, he found that they were still the wolf eyes he was familiar with. It was Caesar, not the ferocious beasts in the forest. Seeing Xiao Xian coming over to check Caesar's wounds, Lang Jie moved his cold hands and smiled. "It's nothing, as long as Caesar is awake." After waking up, Caesar slowly stood up and moved around in the cave. "Why do I feel that every time Caesar comes close to me, I'm very nervous?" Tu said to the people next to him. Me, too. Ba also said. There was still meat in the cave, so Xiao Xian cut some for Caesar. After waking up, Caesar's appetite became much bigger. He ate half a deer, but he was still not full. But there was not much food left in the cave, so he did not continue eating. The next day, the hunting team set out to continue hunting. The skinny Caesar set out with the hunting team. "Shouldn't we let him rest for a few more days?" Mai asked Xiao Xian. "No need, he's fine." Mai saw that Caesar wasn't forcing himself to walk. Instead, he seemed to be looking forward to it, as if he couldn't wait to run a lap in the forest, so he didn't object to it. The wolves were not around the giant antler deer herd, so the hunting team planned to hunt a few more deer. They drove the deer herd away and aimed at the deer that was separated from the herd. That one. Lang Jie was about to ask Caesar to drive the deer towards them, when a dark gray shadow flashed by and rushed towards the giant antler deer that was separated from the herd. Bang! The giant antler deer and the dark gray shadow fell down together. When they looked again, they found that the giant antler deer had fallen to the ground, and Caesar was biting its neck. Chapter 131. The day before yesterday, Caesar had been flung away by an old deer, but today he could directly pounce on a young deer and make it fall to the ground. Just now, Caesar's speed and strength had far exceeded that of 2 days ago. Crack! With a crisp sound, the deer stopped moving. Caesar let go of the deer's neck and gasped for breath. Deer blood dripped from the wolf's teeth, and the blood on the ground grew bigger and bigger. Because of the hunting just now, Caesar's eyes were still full of murderous intent, but it could be seen that Caesar was very excited now. Looking at Caesar like this, Lang Jie and others did not dare to make a sound, let alone instruct him to drive away the separated deer. Although he had woken up and could walk and run, Caesar was still a little weak. After gasping for breath for a while, Caesar opened his mouth again and bit the deer's neck. Then, he dragged the deer in the direction of Xiao Xian. Mai and the others' eyelids twitched. Just now, he threw down the deer face to face. What was going on now? Even if Caesar had grown up, he was still much smaller than this adult deer. However, at this moment, Caesar was dragging this deer step by step. Considering Caesar's speed and strength just now, Mai and the others looked at each other. Ferocious beast. Maybe it was not as ferocious as the four-fanged wild boar, but it could be counted as a ferocious beast. Even though they knew that Caesar was not malicious, watching the wolf dragging the deer step by step, Mai and the others could not help but feel nervous. When Caesar dragged the deer past them, everyone's muscles tightened. They could also smell the smell of deer blood coming out of Caesar's breath. The momentum of blood. This was a ferocious beast. Against wild beasts, they might be able to win easily, but against ferocious beasts, they never dared to underestimate them. Every time they faced a ferocious beast, they were extremely cautious. They had never thought that they would be so close to a ferocious beast. After placing the dead deer in front of Xiao Xian, Caesar began to assist the hunting team in hunting. It had just killed one deer, so it didn't plan to hunt anymore. It only helped to drive the others away. At first, everyone was very nervous, but once the hunt began, they quickly entered the zone. In the past, it was difficult for Caesar to drive away the stray deer. Sometimes, he could see the carelessness in the eyes of the deer. However, they had been attacked by wolves similar to Caesar many times before, so it was inevitable that they were afraid of wolves. Sometimes when they saw Caesar turn and run, it was just a conditioned reflex. But now, after seeing that Caesar had killed a young giant antlered deer, they knew to be afraid. Especially the stray deer, when they saw Caesar, they ran away quickly and turned around without any hesitation. As long as he didn't have to face the giant antlered deer in the herd, Caesar could easily win. Fortunately, the giant antlered deer were protecting their young deer, so they wouldn't leave the herd easily. As long as the number of giant antlered deer was within their acceptable range, they wouldn't come out. When they dragged the prey back to the cave, the hunting team was still sighing in their hearts. Who would have thought that humans and ferocious beasts would hunt together in the past? However, on second thought, their hunting team was the first hunting team with wild beasts, and now it was also the first hunting team with ferocious beasts. Thinking about it made them a little excited. Even Mai was discussing with Qiao in private whether they should catch 2 young beasts for Yang Guang and his sister to train. Unfortunately, Yang Guang and his sister refused Mai's offer. They said that they would go catch them themselves when they became stronger. "We need to catch a strong one," Guang said. "Yes," Yang echoed. "We need to be as obedient as Caesar." "Yes. We don't want a bald pig like Mao." "Yes." Mai shook his head and smiled as he listened to the siblings. Not all of them can mutate. Xiao Xian didn't tell them about the secret art of engraving. It was not up to Xiao Xian to explain, but up to the shaman. They would discuss it with the shaman when they got back to the tribe. The day before they went to the second location, Caesar left the hunting team, and Xiao Xian didn't follow him this time. When Caesar came back again, he was injured, but not seriously. There was a lot of blood on his fur, but most of it wasn't his. In Caesar's mouth, a wolf's neck was bitten off, and it was dragged back by Caesar. "Is this the alpha of the wolf pack?" Mai looked at the fur patterns on the dead wolf, and said in surprise, "It looks like it." Lang Jie looked at it and said, "Is Caesar going to slaughter that pack of wolves?" Someone asked. Maybe he did. So, there is no wolf pack in this place for the time being? No matter whether Caesar slaughtered that wolf pack or just killed the alpha, it was a good thing for the hunting team. At least the wolf pack was less of a threat, and they really didn't want to face such a cruel wolf pack. Caesar dragged the alpha wolf to Xiao Xian and put it down, looking at Xiao Xian. "This is your prey. Put it in the storage cave with the other prey in the hunting team, and bring it back later. Skin it and feed it to your nest," Xiao Xian said. Caesar seemed to be satisfied with Xiao Xian's suggestion. After putting it down, he didn't look at it anymore, and just lay down to rest. The wounds on its body had already scabbed, so it didn't need any more medicine. As soon as Caesar left, Yang Guang and his sister, Tu, Jeba, and other young warriors gathered around and looked at the dead alpha wolf with interest. They didn't dare to get close to the living ones, but it was okay to look at the dead ones. Even at this moment, the alpha wolf still looked ferocious. Just like how Mao was interested in the thorn-black wind, these young warriors were also curious about this alpha wolf. They touched it from its teeth to its claws and kept praising it. No wonder it's an alpha wolf. Look at its teeth and claws. Brother Xian, will Caesar also become an alpha wolf in the future? Yang Guang and his sister looked at Xiao Xian. "I don't know," Xiao Xian said. "Could a wolf in the hunting team become an alpha wolf?" Everyone shook their heads. But there were still many cubs in the tribe. Maybe he could really become an alpha wolf. But they didn't know how long they would have to wait. The following hunting was much easier than usual. With Caesar's help, Mai and the others felt less pressure. After all, there were many young warriors in the hunting team, and one more strong helper meant one more guarantee. When the hunting team came to an end, they went back along the route. When they passed by the hunting area of the first stronghold, they didn't see a wolf with a spotted pattern on its back. That wolf pack might have disappeared from this forest. After these days, although Caesar still looked very thin, he was much better than when he just woke up. He would be even better after a while. Caesar hunted for food every day, so he ate a lot. If only Xiao Xian raised him, he couldn't afford it. Fortunately, he hunted a lot of prey for himself, so he could bring them back with him. On the day when the hunting team returned to the tribe, Caesar once again aroused a heated discussion. But Xiao Xian didn't say too much until he was summoned by the shaman. "You used the secret art of engraving?" Although there was doubt in his tone, the shaman's eyes were very sure. Even if the ancestors used the secret art of engraving, the success rate was only 50%. But Xiao Xian succeeded on his first try. The shaman didn't know whether he was lucky or not. The reason for Caesar's change could be hidden from others, but not from the shaman. Besides, Xiao Xian didn't want to hide it from the shaman. Xiao Xian told the shaman the details of what happened at that time. He said, "When I saw Caesar's change, I was shocked. After all, there was no such record in the ancient scrolls left by the ancestors." In order to be sure, the shaman carefully looked through the animal skin scrolls related to the secret art of engraving. Indeed, there was no record of Caesar's change. According to the animal skin scrolls, after the engraving was successful, the changes of the hunting dogs didn't happen so fast or so violently. The effect of the secret art of engraving seemed to be a little different from what the ancestors said. The shaman asked Xiao Xian to bring Caesar to see for himself. After a careful examination, he felt that Caesar's change was much greater than what the ancestors had recorded. Not only that, but Caesar didn't stop changing after he woke up. As time went by, Caesar's change became more and more obvious. He didn't stop growing. Sometimes when he moved around in the house, Old Ku was afraid that he would knock down the wall. "When Cha-Cha meets the requirements, I'll engrave it on him and see his change," Xiao Xian said. After the first attempt, Xiao Xian was confident that he could successfully use the secret art of engraving again. In fact, in retrospect, the secret art of engraving was not as difficult as what was recorded in the ancient scrolls. If the shaman knew what Xiao Xian was thinking, he would probably run to the fire pit and kowtow to the ancestors who had passed away. With such talent, why didn't he become a shaman? Hearing Xiao Xian mention Cha-Cha, the shaman didn't agree. "No, Cha-Cha is different from Caesar," the shaman said. Xiao Xian wasn't sure what the shaman meant, but before he could continue asking, the shaman talked about something else. Since Caesar's engraving was successful, the other cubs in the tribe had to be developed well. In the shaman's opinion, he would be satisfied if 1 out of 10 cubs in the tribe could grow up to Caesar's level. The cubs who were growing up were not as obedient as Caesar. They were harder to control, and most of the people in the tribe were not good-tempered. If it weren't for Xiao Xian's frequent lectures and tips, they would have already started fighting, and more cubs would have ended up in the pot. After leaving the shaman's place and going down the mountain, Xiao Xian saw several cubs following behind Caesar. Compared to when they had just arrived, the cubs had grown up a lot. By this time next year, they would be a small wolf pack. When the several young men saw Xiao Xian, they hurried to ask for advice from Xiao Xian. Some of them didn't take it seriously before, but when they saw the changed Caesar, they changed their attitude. After Xiao Xian left, the shaman came to the place where the ancient scrolls were kept. He opened a huge stone box, in which many ancient scrolls were neatly placed. The shaman took out several original ancient scrolls, all of which were related to the secret art of engraving. It seemed that the matter of publicizing the hunting dogs and the secret art of engraving could be put on the agenda. The shaman thought to himself. After taking out several animal skin scrolls, the shaman looked at the ancient scrolls in the big stone box, sighed deeply, and closed the stone lid. He believed that the dusty history would gradually reveal itself in front of everyone. Chapter 132. When Xiao Xian wasn't out hunting, he would go up the mountain every few days to hand in the animal skin rolls that the shaman asked him to draw. This time, Xiao Xian didn't draw the Wu roll, but an ordinary animal skin roll. The shaman wanted to let everyone know that their ancestors used hunting dogs to stimulate their enthusiasm for raising and training young beasts. However, there were some things that couldn't be disclosed, so he could only choose to disclose some. When the content was selected, the Xiao Xian, who was better at drawing than most people, would draw it. The annotations would also be selected from some parts of the original version, and not all of it would be written. Compared to the Wu roll, which required the use of the power of inheritance, the ordinary picture rolls were much easier to draw. In less than 10 days, Xiao Xian finished all 100 picture rolls with annotations. On this day, Xiao Xian took the last 10 animal skin rolls up the mountain and handed them to the shaman. The people in the tribe were already used to Xiao Xian's frequent visits to the shaman's place. Even the guards at the gate didn't stop him. The shaman said that if Xiao Xian came, he could go in directly. "These are the last 10. Xiao Xian put the 10 animal skin rolls on the stone table in front of the shaman, and let him check them to make sure that there was nothing out of the plan. The shaman quickly opened them and glanced at them, then put them aside. He didn't ask Xiao Xian to leave immediately like the previous times. When Xiao Xian saw the shaman like this, he knew that the old man still had something to say, and it wouldn't be just a few words. He sat up straight and waited for the shaman to continue. Seeing Xiao Xian's reaction, the shaman smiled first, and then his smile faded. He said, "Do you know what I, the chief, and the elders of the tribe are discussing?" Xiao Xian shook his head. He knew that during this period of time, the chief, the two team leaders, and several senior warriors with more authority in the tribe often came to the shaman's place together. Seeing such a scene, he knew that it was not a small matter, so every time Xiao Xian came, he would not stay for long. Xiao Xian was not curious about the things that the shaman would tell him sooner or later. But now, the shaman didn't seem to intend to hide it anymore, at least not from Xiao Xian. The shaman took out a large animal skin roll and spread it out on the stone table. "Do you know what this picture is?" Xiao Xian leaned forward and looked at the drawing on the animal skin roll. Although the drawing was rough, it could still be seen. This is the tribe and the hunting route. The animal skin scroll on the stone table was equivalent to a simple map. It only showed the location of the tribe and a few hunting routes. Most of the drawings on the animal skin roll were in black, including the tribe and several hunting routes. However, one of them was in red, and this red route was not one of the hunting routes that Xiao Xian knew. The shaman raised his finger and pointed at the red route. "This is the content of our discussion." Xiao Xian stared at the line and thought for a while. He raised his eyebrows and looked at the shaman. "The tribe is planning to open up a new hunting route?" The shaman didn't expect Xiao Xian to guess it so quickly. After all, for most people in the tribe, they had never thought of opening up a new hunting route. Even if they saw the map, they might not think in that direction. But the shaman was only stunned for a short while, and then he smiled. Indeed, there were more and more people in the tribe, but the number of people who went out to hunt was limited. Although the warriors who had special family situations or were injured were excluded from the hunting list, it was inevitable that some healthy people were left behind. It was too wasteful, but it was unnecessary to increase the number of people in each hunting group. On the contrary, it would be worse. Going out to hunt was not always better with more people. In the records left by the ancestors, there were also disadvantages of having too many people. These years, the shaman had been thinking about opening up a new hunting route, and Caesar's change strengthened his determination. If a batch of cubs in the tribe grew up, and the engraving was successful, they would be a great help. This was a force that could not be underestimated. In this way, it was necessary to open up a new hunting route. Therefore, the shaman found the chief, two team leaders, and several old warriors who had more say in the tribe to discuss. If the shaman did not mention opening up a new hunting route, the others would not insist on it. But since the shaman mentioned it, the old warriors were all very excited. For them, this was an epoch-making matter. They respected and admired the ancestors, but they also listened to the shaman. On this matter, the people who were called over were basically supportive. Opening up a new hunting route was not something that could be done in a day, and the preparatory work had to be done. The most important thing was the selection of people. After the discussion, they finally decided to start the plan in 3 years. If it went well, it might be started in a year. If some unpredictable changes happened, it would be delayed. If it could not be carried out in 3 years, the shaman would cancel the plan. As for the number of people who would open up the new hunting route, it was preliminarily decided to be 30 people. The most important thing was quality, not quantity. And this quality did not necessarily mean that they were strong. It had to be considered from all aspects. After the preliminary decision, the two team leaders and several old warriors went back and secretly told their children and grandchildren about this matter. They hoped that their children and grandchildren could perform well in the next 1 or 2 years, and then they would be more likely to be selected into the list of 30 people. They were not afraid of opening up a new hunting route. Almost everyone who heard the news was very excited, especially those young warriors. They were now in very good physical condition, and every time they went out to hunt, their performance was more eye-catching. Of course, they would try their best to fight for the quota of 30 people. Opening up a new hunting route like the ancestors was an honor that would be recorded in the history of the tribe. How could they not be excited? No wonder there were some people training crazily in the training ground recently. After the shaman finished speaking, he looked at Xiao Xian, who was sitting across the stone table. Xiao Xian's reaction was different from the others. As far as the shaman knew, everyone who knew about this was very excited. Some of them were even excited for several days. Even the chief was no exception. The chief and the two team leaders naturally had to participate in opening up a new hunting route. But why was Xiao Xian so calm? Was he not optimistic about the opening of the new hunting route? The shaman looked at Xiao Xian, who was thinking with his eyelids down. He was very curious about what Xiao Xian was thinking. Xiao Xian was silent for a while and looked up at the shaman. He did not talk about the opening of the new hunting route, but asked, "Have you ever thought about contacting other tribes?" When Xiao Xian said other tribes, there was no uncertainty at all. The shaman could hear that Xiao Xian was very sure that there were other tribes. The shaman, who was originally thinking about the opening of the new hunting route, now had a sharp look in his eyes. There was no smile on his face, which was completely different from his usual calm demeanor. At this moment, the shaman was like a war knife, and the blade of this war knife was pointed at Xiao Xian. At that moment, Xiao Xian almost jumped away, but he controlled himself and sat in the same place. He maintained the same expression as before, looking at the shaman. The atmosphere was tense for a while, and then the shaman gradually withdrew his aura. At first glance, he looked no different from usual, but the stiffness and seriousness on his face were extremely rare. He was not in the mood to talk about the opening of the new hunting route. The shaman took a deep breath and stared at Xiao Xian's eyes. "How do you know? Were there other people outside the tribe?" When the people in the tribe were bored, they would talk about it in private. They heard that there were other tribes, but they only existed in rumors. Many people thought that they were the only tribe in the world, but some people believed that there were other tribes. It was just that the world was too big for them to go out. In the tribe, there were probably only 5 people who knew the exact answer. The shaman was undoubtedly the one who knew the most. After all, he could understand the Wu role that was passed down from generation to generation, and he knew more things that others did not know. However, the shaman remembered that he did not show Xiao Xian any Wu role about other tribes. "I came out from a cave near the foot of the mountain. In that cave, there was a stone room, and there were paintings on the walls of the stone room," Xiao Xian said. The shaman felt his heart suddenly beat. He was not sure whether there were paintings in the cave or not. Someone once went to the cave to have a look, and except for some very old broken stone tools, there was nothing else. The paintings were covered. Xiao Xian told the shaman how he found the paintings, but after I woke up, I covered them with stone powder when I left the cave. So far, no one else has seen them except me. The shaman was relieved, but he was also curious about the paintings in the cave at the foot of the mountain. He did not remember any related records. "What are the paintings?" the shaman asked. "There are hunting dogs, farmland, and exquisite jars. And?" the shaman asked. Xiao Xian paused and said, "One day we will return to the old land. The glory is still there, and the fire of Yanjiao will never die." When Xiao Xian said the first word of this sentence, the shaman's hands began to tremble. This was a sign that he could not control his emotions. "Zan." The shaman's voice was a little hoarse. In the list of people recorded in the ancient scroll, the third name was Zan. And what Xiao Xian said just now was also recorded in the ancient scroll. No longer excited about opening a new route, the shaman's face was bitter. "If we can go out, why bother opening a new route?" Xiao Xian looked at the shaman. The shaman's eyes were red, and he almost burst into tears. It seemed that his emotions would not calm down for a while. After thinking about it, Xiao Xian still did not say what was recorded in his notebook. When Xiao Xian walked out of the stone house, the shaman was still in low spirits. Originally, Xiao Xian did not intend to tell the shaman about the murals in the cave so soon, but he did not expect to encounter the plan of opening a new route. After thinking about it, he told the shaman about the murals. It seemed that the shaman did not want to go out, and many ancestors had probably tried before, but still did not succeed. Alas, there was still a long way to go. While walking, Xiao Xian suddenly heard a "ao-ao" sound coming from above. When he looked up, Xiao Xian wanted to throw a spear over. At the moment, the cha-cha was holding a cub, and the cub was obviously trained by someone in the tribe. It was crying out in fear. "Cha-cha, get down here." Chapter 133. Many people who raised cubs had little patience during training. Every day when they went to bed, they would think, "Why don't we cook them tomorrow?" But seeing the changes in Caesar, some people had expectations and decided to continue raising them. Xiao Xian said that cubs needed frequent training, so they took time out every day to train them. If it was inconvenient in the tribe, they would take them to the training ground. In the mountains and forests, many young beasts learned how to hunt by playing around, such as searching, chasing, pouncing on food, biting, and other skills. After training, some cubs would show their talents and surpass their peers in some aspects, while others were more ordinary. However, in the tribe there were still cubs left, and they were very talented. When these people took their cubs to the mountains around the training ground to train, Cha-Cha liked to make trouble for them. Ray was originally training his own cub, teaching it how to listen to instructions and lurk. As he was talking, he heard a soft sound beside him. It was the sound of an object flying quickly. He looked to the side and found that the cub was gone. Looking up, Ray found that Xiao Xian's eagle was holding his cub and flying in a circle above his head. No matter how he shouted and threatened, it did not let go of the cub. Instead, it flew higher and higher, and then flapped its wings and flew away. Cha-Cha flew back to the tribe with the cub, just in time to meet Xiao Xian, who was going down the mountain. Cha-Cha did not take other people's words to heart, but it still listened to Xiao Xian. It did not directly throw the cub. If it did, Xiao Xian would not catch it, and the cub would die. After landing, Cha-Cha threw the cub to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian caught it, looked at it, and recognized that it was Ray's cub. He did not know what species this cub was, and many people in the tribe did not care about it. Xiao Xian remembered that Ray named this cub Meng. At first glance, Meng's appearance looked a bit like a hyena, but if you look closely, you will find many differences from hyenas. It had longer and more powerful jaws and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It was a carnivorous beast that Ray's hunting group often encountered. In terms of habits, it was more similar to wolves. Compared to wolves, Meng's species had a longer and narrower body shape, and their skulls were relatively larger. Adult individuals were covered with strong and powerful muscles, and they could run very fast. They were a kind of predator that the hunting team had to be vigilant against. Lei also took advantage of their group battle to capture Meng, who was still in its infancy. Although it was startled when Cha-Cha brought it up into the air, it did not forget to bare its teeth at Cha-Cha after being caught by Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian checked Meng. Meng was not scratched by Cha-Cha and did not suffer any other injuries. He guessed that Cha-Cha just wanted to scare Lei and Meng. It was purely a prank. While Xiao Xian was checking, Lei caught up with them. He was so tired that he was panting. When he looked at Cha-Cha, the veins on his forehead stood out. Cha-Cha could fly directly, and it was more convenient in the air. However, Lei had to run down the mountain, and there were many twists and turns on the way. It took him a long time to catch up. As soon as it saw Lei, Meng, who had been put on the ground by Xiao Xian, immediately ran to Cha-Cha, who was behind Xiao Xian and stood beside Lei's legs. "Good training," Xiao Xian said. From Meng's behavior, it could be seen that it had a strong dependence on Lei. This was a good sign. It was easier for it to follow orders, and it was easier for it to survive the first hunt. Although it was different from Xiao Xian's hunting team, and they were on opposite sides under certain circumstances, Lei's attitude towards Xiao Xian was much better because of Xiao Xian's training. As for the one-year promise mentioned last winter, now it seemed like a joke. Everyone knew that Xiao Xian had found a very precious fire crystal in the first hunt after the ritual ceremony. Many people in the hunting team had been carried out of the danger zone by him. That was also one of the achievements of the hunt. If they were to compare achievements, no one could compare with him at all. Therefore, last winter's one-year promise. When winter came this year, everyone would still present their results for the year according to the agreement. However, Xiao Xian's results were not included. Lei had no choice but to accept this result. After checking that Meng was not injured, Lei looked at Cha-Cha, who was behind Xiao Xian, and said, "Xian, you should take care of it. It has been causing trouble recently." "Yes, but you also need to train Meng to pay attention to the birds in the sky," Xiao Xian said. Lei nodded and planned to leave with Meng. But he stopped after 2 steps and turned to ask Xiao Xian, "Do you know what the chief and the team leaders discussed at the shaman's place these days?" "You know." Xiao Xian looked at Lei. Since there were elders in Lei's family who participated in the discussion of the new route, they should have been told about it. "Of course I know, and I can tell you. But you have to exchange it with something else." Lei said. "What do you want to know?" Xiao Xian asked. "I want to know the specific reason why Caesar became like this." Lei's eyes were shining with expectation. Between wild beasts and ferocious beasts, he naturally preferred the ferocious beast. If Meng could also become a ferocious beast in the future, you don't need to tell me about the discussion between the team leaders. As for what you want to know, you will know in a few days." After that, Xiao Xian made a gesture, and Cha-Cha immediately flew up and went down the mountain with Xiao Xian. Looking at a man and an eagle leaving, Lei frowned. Could it be that Xian already knew about the new route? Didn't they say that only a few people knew about it? And they were all blood relatives. But why did the shaman tell him? As for the reason he wanted to know about Caesar's change, what did "you will know in a few days" mean? 3 days later, the shaman asked people to distribute 100 animal skin rolls, which recorded the secret engraving technique and the hunting dogs of the ancestors, to all the tribes on the mountain. Although it was not enough to give one to each family, it was enough to give one to several families. 100 animal skin rolls set off a big wave in the originally calm tribe. The matter of training cubs to hunt actually existed from the beginning of the ancestors. The ancestors were really powerful and domineering. There was also a magical engraving technique. Was it related to Caesar's change into a ferocious beast? The shaman was really omnipotent. The shaman did not say how Caesar changed, nor did he say who made the engraving technique for Caesar. But, according to the record on the animal skin roll, only the shaman could use the engraving technique. Naturally, everyone thought that the shaman had already made the engraving technique for Caesar, and that was why there was such a change. When the shaman distributed these animal skin rolls, he also said that if there was a suitable beast in the tribe that was comparable to the hunting dogs, he would make the engraving technique for that beast. The shaman drew a big pie for everyone. How to eat it, and how to eat more, depended on each person. So, the people who had lost their patience became enthusiastic again. Even when they went out to hunt, they caught a few small beasts, knocked them out, tied them up, and brought them back to the tribe to train the hunting skills of the cubs. Some people did not intend to raise cubs, but after seeing the animal skin rolls distributed by the shaman, they also had the idea. For a time, the number of cubs in the tribe, which had decreased sharply, gradually increased. But most of them were still in the pot. 1 year later, the first batch of cubs that were caught back to the tribe seemed to be more mature. Maybe they were not adults in their species, but most of the wild beasts in the forest could participate in hunting at this age, either by themselves or with their blood relatives. At this time, some people in the hunting team began to have ideas. They asked the team leaders for instructions, hoping to bring the beasts they had trained. In their opinion, the beasts they had trained were already very powerful. When they were in the tribe, they could often catch some stone rats. They were also very obedient to orders, fierce enough, and strong enough to attack. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that the beasts they had trained were much better than Caesar's. Not only 1 or 2 people had this idea, but several people had the same idea. They had been raising the cubs for almost 2 years. They had spent a lot of time and effort on these cubs. Now that they were so strong, it was time for them to go hunting. The shaman looked at the team leader's requests, but did not refute. He just reminded them again about some of the things that Xiao Xian had told them to pay attention to. Seeing that the shaman, the chief, and the team leaders all agreed, several warriors took the trained beasts and swaggered across the path of glory. They set off to show off. However, when the hunting team came back again, there were no beasts around them. They did not see the beasts that had followed them before they set off. 5 of them went out, and only 1 came back. The only one that came back was Meng, raised by Lei. Even though Meng came back, he had many wounds on his body. However, when he remembered that Caesar had also come back with wounds, Lei was relieved. Anyway, as the only one that came back, Meng was already very good compared to the other 4 beasts. Seeing the result this time, some people were very worried, and began to doubt whether their cubs could come back safely in the future. Among the 4 beasts that did not come back, 2 of them could not control their fierceness when they were hunting prey. They did not listen to orders and attacked the hunting team. The result was predictable. They were killed on the spot by the warriors of the hunting team. As for the other 2 that did not come back, one of them failed to hunt, and was kicked in the head by the prey. It did not last long before it died. As for the last one, it ran away. No matter how they called it, it did not stop, and it did not look back. Seeing the result, some people who wanted to take their beasts out to hunt immediately decided to wait. Some of the things that Xiao Xian had told them to pay attention to, such as dependence and self-control of the beasts, had to be strengthened. In the next few hunts, except for Meng that was brought by Lei, several beasts that many people did not think highly of also came back successfully. For example, Liao, the cave lion raised by Mo Sia, the bald pig raised by Mao, and the beasts raised by Yang Guang and his sister. Yang Guang and his sister also caught 2 beasts when they were hunting. The elder brother, Yang, brought back a cub that looked like a hyena, named In. And the one that Guang brought back was a big bird's egg, which was stolen from a bird's nest. She had always hoped to have a bird like Cha-Cha. However, when she hatched the egg according to the method that Xiao Xian had told her, she found that the bird could not fly. It belonged to a group of wingless birds, similar to forest raccoons. But she did not put the bird into the pot, but continued to raise it, and named it Jing. After raising it for a year, the 2 beasts raised by Yang Guang and his sister were taken out to participate in a hunt. Their performance was not satisfactory, which made me very happy. Chapter 134. According to the ancient scroll, every hound that could be engraved by the shaman using the secret engraving technique was carefully selected. The number of hounds in the tribe that could barely meet the requirements could be counted with 2 hands. The shaman wanted to engrave these hounds as soon as possible. After all, the ancient scroll said that the effect of engraving in the early stage of the beast was better. The success rate and the chance of growing into ferocious beasts were higher. If he waited a few years or decades, even if the engraving was successful, the beast would not have much room to grow. However, according to the ancient teachings, he had to make sure that they really met the requirements. The shaman was a little hesitant about this. Therefore, the shaman gave Xiao Xian a task to record the training, life, and hunting of the first batch of beasts. So far, the shaman had written down 9 names on the animal skin roll in his hand. Xiao Xian handed the results to the shaman and waited for his opinion. The shaman had the right to decide whether to engrave these beasts or not. The chosen ones would be the first batch of beasts in the tribe to be engraved by the shaman. Xiao Xian naturally would not do it without permission. Whether it was Caesar, who had been engraved by Xiao Xian, or the other beasts, as long as the shaman could engrave a batch of them, they would become the 9 beasts with special status in the tribe. From birds, to ferocious beasts, to turtles, these 9 beasts could be said to be related to the sea, land, and air. However, how they would develop in the future, and whether they would be the best or not was unknown. Only time could tell. Looking at the animal skin roll handed over by Xiao Xian, about half an hour later, the shaman sighed and said, "These beasts look good, but I am still worried." "What do you mean?" The shaman looked at Xiao Xian and said slowly, "When they are separated, their performance is not bad. But what will happen when they are together?" The shaman did not expect these beasts to be close and cooperate perfectly, but he at least wanted to make sure that they would not fight when they were together. When hunting, many beasts would fight with each other. If there was a big conflict, after the engraving, the situation would be more obvious. In that case, it would not be safe. Xiao Xian was silent for a while and said, "So, you want to see them together? Not bad." The shaman used his finger to point at the row of names on the animal skin roll. Out of the 9 names, 2 of them would not be involved. What he meant by together was 7 of them. As for the other 2, they didn't need to cooperate with others. One was the tortoise in the medicine house, and the other was a snow-white falcon that Gigu brought back from the Green Land. The reason why Gigu's team often had better harvests than Ta's advance group was because of this falcon. However, Gigu didn't tell them about it until now, and brought it back to the tribe. These 2 were special cases. Other than them, the remaining 7 had to cooperate. Looking at the 7 names, Xiao Xian could only sigh inwardly. How do I put them together? Even if the 7 of them formed a group, it was completely different from the wolf pack in Xiao Xian's imagination. From a modern point of view, they were just a mixed army. There were too many species, and none of them were the same. Even their tempers were different. Xiao Xian stayed at the shaman's place and discussed with him for a long time. Then he took a piece of animal skin roll that was similar to the imperial edict written by the shaman and left the stone house with a sigh. He went to inform the beasts on the imperial edict and the people who raised them. Gigu's hunting team came back yesterday, and Ta's team would set off tomorrow. Now everyone was in the tribe, so Xiao Xian had to inform them one by one. The first thing he went to was Mao. When he arrived at the door of the team leader's house, there was no one at the door, and he didn't hear anything inside. Xiao Xian shouted, "See ya!" Bang! A rather sturdy bald pig broke out of the wall. Xiao Xian didn't know what to say. Looking at the big hole in the stone wall behind Siya, Xiao Xian decided to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, Ta would be mad when he came back. Now, Sia's 4 teeth had grown out, and it looked much more majestic. However, it still had the title of Bald Pig. After Sia broke through the wall, Mao came out with a bitter face. He scolded Xiao Xian. "Why did you call it at this time? What happened to it?" Xiao Xian asked. "It was sleeping. Maybe it was dreaming. It's going to hunt tomorrow, so it's very excited." Mao rubbed his face hard. "If you have something to say, just say it. I have to fix the wall before my father comes back, or he will beat me again." Most of the houses on the mountain were made of stone. Sia's personality was not stable yet. It was like a young man, easily agitated. Once it was agitated, the house would be destroyed. Ta didn't allow it to live in the house, but as long as Ta was not there, Sia would force its way in. The door of Ta's house had been expanded several times. Xiao Xian didn't waste any time. He handed over the imperial edict of the shaman. "Read it yourself." Mao was thinking about how to fix the wall, but after reading the scroll, he forgot all about fixing the wall and getting beaten up. He rubbed his hands together and couldn't wait to set off. It was written that if the result was satisfactory, the shaman would choose the best one to perform the secret engraving skill. After 2 years of waiting, how could Mao not be excited when he finally saw the legendary secret engraving skill? "When are we going?" Mao asked hurriedly. "We won't be able to make it tomorrow. Let's do it next time," Xiao Xian said. Mao was a little disappointed, but it wouldn't be long. He could take advantage of this hunting to practice more. Next time, he would be able to amaze the world. Sia must be the best one, the shaman mentioned. Ignoring the excited Mao, Xiao Xian continued to inform the others to go to Lei's house, which was also on the mountain. Lei's pet, Meng, was also on the shaman's list. After Mao and Lei, the third one to be informed was Mo Air, who now lived on the mountainside. When Xiao Xian arrived, Mao, the cave lion, was lazily lying at the door and rubbing the ground. After hunting, it would sleep for a few days after eating and drinking. Since Mao was in the tribe, many people were less afraid of the ferocious cave lions. Seeing Xiao Xian, Mao, who was rolling at the door and licking its paws, swung its tail and knocked on the door. Soon, Mo Air came to open the door. He looked like he had just woken up. When he was alone, he was in good spirits after hunting. But since he took Mao with him, although he had more prey, he was physically and mentally exhausted. Mao's temper was not as good as Caesar's, so he had to keep an eye on it. "What's the matter?" Mo Air yawned and kicked the cave lion away. Looking at the cave lion, which was rolling on the ground lazily because of Mo Air's kick, Xiao Xian was not surprised at all. He gave the imperial edict to Mo Air and told him what he had said to Mao. Looking at the words on the animal skin roll, Mo Air shivered and was no longer sleepy. He breathed quickly. "I know, I will train it well." After leaving Mo Air's place, Xiao Xian went to Chiao Mai and his wife's house to inform Yang Guang and his sister about this matter. At the same time, the shaman chose to let the mixed army join the first hunting group, which was Mai's group. He had to tell Mai about this. When Xiao Xian was discussing with Chiao Mai and his wife, and Jing were playing in the expanded yard. The two of them did not match the elegant name and Jing at all. Yang Guang and his sister were cheering them on. An attack from behind. Avoid its claws. Jing, pat it, peck it with your beak. Yes, that's it. And was an animal that looked like a hyena but had hooves. Looking at its feet, one would think it was a vegetarian. But looking at the sharp teeth in its mouth, one would know that it was actually a carnivore. It looked like a sheep in wolf's skin, but the skin did not cover its feet. Beneath this peaceful name was actually a ferocious beast. As for Jing, Xiao Xian admired this kind of bird that used its head as a hoe. With that kind of head, when it ran and bumped into the prey, it would shake its head as if it had hit the prey with a brick. Sometimes it would kill the prey with a peck. It was totally different from Cha-Cha. After notifying them one by one, Xiao Xian went home to pack up the tools for tomorrow's departure. Since the end of last year, Xiao Xian had taken Cha-Cha out for hunting. And Cha-Cha did not disappoint. It performed well and did not make any trouble. At most, it caught a baby deer from the herd without permission. Later, when the giant horns in the herd saw the figure in the sky, they all became alert. The first time, Cha-Cha succeeded because of their carelessness. Later, when they became alert, it was difficult for Cha-Cha to succeed again. More than 20 days later, Ta took the hunting team out and returned. Then, Gigu's team also took turns to set out. But this time, Mo Air and Lei stayed in the tribe to train with Xiao Xian, Mao, and Yang Guang and his sister. As Xiao Xian thought, When these beasts gathered together, they could fight for a small stone rat for a long time, let alone cooperate. Fortunately, Caesar, as a ferocious beast, was here. As soon as he saw them fighting fiercely, he went to mediate. During this period, the people in the tribe often heard the roars of beasts coming from the training ground. At first, they were nervous, but soon they got used to it. They could tell which beast was roaring. Although these beasts did not get along well at the beginning, it was still humans who played an important role in it. Because of human factors and Caesar's violent suppression, these beasts finally stopped fighting after 5 days. 10 days later, these beasts learned the preliminary cooperation. 15 days later, their cooperation was further improved. 20 days later, they could barely satisfy Xiaoxian. The shaman did not expect these beasts to cooperate well. After all, they might still hunt separately in the future. This time, it was just a way to test their temperament again. As long as they obeyed all the orders and returned safely, the shaman would definitely mark them immediately. So, on the day of departure, as long as the tribe was not on patrol, they all gathered on both sides of the path of glory to watch the team. In the team, the conspicuous beasts became the focus of everyone's discussion. I felt a lot of pressure. A few years ago, they would guard against the beasts when hunting, but now they were standing in their own team. Lang Jie touched his neck uncomfortably. Behind him was Guang's forest raccoes. He was afraid that the forest raccoes would peck him. His fragile neck could not withstand a peck from the forest raccoes. The shaman stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the hunting team going down. He bowed to the fire pit, praying for the ancestors' blessing and that each beast could come back safely. There were at least hundreds of cubs in the first batch, but today, only a few of them were left. How difficult it was. Although the shaman felt that these beasts were certainly not as good as the hunting dogs of the ancestors, they should not be too bad, right? Chapter 135. The team was a little big, so the warriors in the hunting group were all very curious about the beasts that came with them. When Caesar came with them for the first time, everyone was worried. Now they were used to it, and when they saw so many beasts in their own hunting group, they felt a little proud. Look, our hunting group is the first one to bring so many beasts with them. However, when they really climbed over the mountain and came to the first stronghold, they found that it was not a good thing. With the addition of these beasts, the amount of prey they could hunt decreased significantly. Xiaoxian did not put them all together at once. When the hunting group went out, they also divided into 2 groups, and the 7 beasts that came with them were also divided into 2 groups. Mao, Mo, and Lei brought their own beasts and followed Mai's group, while Yang Guang and his sister followed Xiao's group. As for Xiaoxian, his main task this time was to record the performance of these beasts and show it to the shaman. So, to some extent, Xiaoxian was like a teacher checking the students' grades, and these primary school students were doing their best to show their excellent performance. Coming to a strange environment, they were a little restrained at first, but after a few days of adaptation, they were able to hunt freely. 3 days later, the hunting group returned to the cave. Xiaoxian recorded today's observation on the animal skin roll, while the others kept glancing at Xiaoxian. They wanted to know what Xiaoxian had recorded, but Xiaoxian did not show it to them, and even if he showed it to them, they could not understand it. Since they could not see the record, they could only test it with words. Brother Xian, what do you think of our performance these days? Yang Guang and his sister were sent to inquire. Not bad. Xiaoxian did not raise his head, and continued to write symbols that the others could not understand on the animal skin roll. What did not bad mean? Was he satisfied or not? They exchanged glances, and then Lei, the oldest among them, said, I think we can challenge something more difficult. Every day, he would catch those metabao beasts, giant tapirs, and giant antlered deer. According to the point of view of most warriors in the tribe, the difficulty of hunting and one's strength could not be reflected without some serious injuries. Since he was going to show the results to the shaman, he had to show them something even better. So what if he was injured? What do you want to do? You want to challenge the giant horn in the giant antler deer herd? Mao said sarcastically. Ray shook his head. There are too many giant horns. It's too difficult. I heard there's a new thorn black wind in one of the pools. She only came out at night. Then what do you want to hunt? Horned rhinoceros? There's more. Yang Guang and his sister joined in the discussion. There's a giant bear at the asphalt pit. They were arguing over who to challenge next. The argument in the cave gave Xiao Xian a headache. He waved his hand and said to those who were arguing, "Stop arguing. Let me be alone." The cave quieted down for a while. But soon Xiao Xian felt something was wrong. He looked up and saw a giant bird's beak. Xiao Xian was speechless. He pushed the big-headed bird aside. "I'm not talking about you. Go play somewhere else." According to the observation of these days, Xiao Xian analyzed the advantages and disadvantages of these beasts. Xiao Xian also heard their discussion. If you really want to challenge something more difficult, you can try that giant bear. But you have to plan well. Only those who can go back alive will have hope. Those who die here will have nothing. Xiao Xian still had to remind them. Otherwise, if these people were too hot-blooded and overestimated themselves, he would not be able to explain it to the shaman when he went back. If they wanted to challenge something more difficult, they had to work together. One or two of them could not defeat the giant bear. After all, the giant bear was a ferocious beast. The two beasts raised by Yang Guang and his sister played together since they were young. When they grew older, they fought each other at home. When they came out, they worked together to fight against the outside world. They formed a tacit understanding between them. At the same time, they also learned self-protection. For example, before they left the tribe, Guang's forest raccoons learned not to chase its prey from the front, but from the side, because it was easy to be trampled from the back. Yang's forest raccoons also learned to dodge attacks more flexibly. This was the main reason why these two beasts were more successful than the other ones. Their cooperation in the past few days was obvious to all. 2 days later, they went out together and went to the asphalt pit. For their sake, Xiaomai and his wife did not bring anyone to hunt. They hid in the surroundings in case of accidents and went out to help. Xiao Xian asked Caesar to help them and act according to the situation. "Xian, you're not going to help?" Lang Jie asked Xiao Xian, who was hiding in another tree. "No, they have to rely on themselves," Xiao Xian said. This was also the shaman's idea, but he needed Xiao Xian to keep an eye on them. When necessary, he and Caesar would help them together. Thinking of the conversation with the shaman that day, Xiao Xian sighed in a low voice. "The old faker is squeezing me dry." "What?" Lang Jie was nervously paying attention to the other side, so he did not hear what Xiao Xian said. "No, I said they did well today." When Xiao Xian and Lang Jie were talking, Cha-Cha in the sky had already shouted, which meant that the other side had begun to act. When they could not beat the other side in terms of force, they had to outsmart it. According to their strategy, they first irritated the giant bear, then led it to the asphalt pit, and then knocked it down. Xiao Xian could not see the situation in the forest from where he was, but there were people like Mai around the place where the giant bear was active. If something happened, they would naturally blow the whistle. After a while, Xiao Xian heard a loud roar, and felt that the forest next to him shook several times. Soon, the sound of footsteps on the ground was also heard. Although it was heavy, it was also very fast. If one did not listen carefully, it was almost impossible to distinguish the sound of each step. In such loud and fast footsteps, there were also many other footsteps, such as the sound of hooves. Whoosh! A silhouette shot out. It was Ah Yang's pet. Following it was Forest Racco's and Lei's Meng. After the three rushed out of the forest, they ran in 3 directions. The giant bear, which almost caught up with the prey, paused at that moment, and then chased after Forest Racco's. Unfortunately, it was still 1 step behind. The big feet of Forest Racco's were not slow. It ran into one of the thin aisles in the asphalt belt like the wind. After running in, Forest Racco's vigorously moved its jaws. Its big mouth was hollow, so when it smacked its mouth, it would make a banging sound. Every time it was emotional, it would make such a sound. At this moment, even people who did not know Forest Racco's could feel the ridicule in it, not to mention the giant bear facing it. The giant bear walked around the edge of the asphalt pit, roaring at the few people inside. Every time it chased a person or beast, it would run into the pit. This made it very angry, but there was nothing it could do. It could only walk around the edge to demonstrate its power. These guys who broke into its territory and dared to eat its food, they should be bitten to death. After walking for a while, the giant bear felt bored. When it was about to leave, a cave lion appeared. Although the cave lion was small in size, it could not erase its disgust for cave lions. The cave lion was the one who robbed its food the most, and all cave lions should die. The giant bear roared and rushed over, but unexpectedly, the cave lion also ran into the asphalt pit and did not sink in. just like the big-mouthed bird before. Roar! The giant bear stood up, hoping that its roar could frighten them, and at the same time, overlook these scums who only knew how to escape. Every time the hunting team was chased to this place, the giant bear would stand up and show its power, roaring as if it wanted to shake the entire forest to pieces. Not only that, Mao and Moer also walked in from another path, standing in the asphalt pit, and threw stones at the giant bear. These stones could not hurt the giant bear, but could increase its anger. Cha-Cha also joined in, and several of them attracted the giant bear's attention to the front or the top. While the giant bear was roaring at the several beasts in the asphalt pit, a figure quietly appeared behind the giant bear and was getting closer and closer. When it was close to a certain distance, it suddenly accelerated and rushed to the giant bear. The angry giant bear did not expect that there would be such a brave one behind it. It was used to roaring at the prey hiding in the asphalt pit, but this time it was defeated. The roar of the beasts had covered some of the sounds. When it felt the ground shaking and knew that something was rushing to it, it only had time to turn around and was hit in the stomach. Even so, it still waved its paw. For Fangs was hit by the bear's paw and rolled on the ground several times. When the giant bear focused on Four Fangs and tried to stabilize its balance, a gray figure flashed by. It was hit again. This time, it was close to its chest, and the strength was stronger than before. Roar! Another roar rang out. This time, it was filled with unease and fear. It knew where it fell, and what would happen to the beasts and ferocious beasts in the forest if they entered here. Bang! The giant figure fell into the asphalt pit, splashing a lot of sticky asphalt. Seeing the giant bear fall into the asphalt pit, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Mao ran out to check Four Fangs' physical condition. For Fangs was hit by the bear's paw, and there were several deep claw marks on its body. But for Four Fangs with rough skin and thick flesh, this injury was not too serious. It's not a big deal, just go back and rest. The claw marks are not deep. Mai looked and said. For Fangs was still a little dizzy, lying on the ground and groaning. As the strongest among the beasts, it had never been hit like this in its life. Seeing that they were not seriously injured, and then looking at the giant bear that fell into the asphalt pit, everyone was still frightened. Fortunately, Caesar had patched it later, or the giant bear might not have been hit into the asphalt pit, and Four Fangs might have been killed by the giant bear's claws. They took the straw rope, and if Four Fangs accidentally fell into the asphalt pit, they would use the straw rope to save it. But unexpectedly, the giant bear seemed to be heavy, but its reaction was much more flexible than they thought. This made them understand that sometimes the plan was only the ideal state, and anything unexpected could happen. Be more cautious when making plans in the future. Xiao Xian said. Yes. They all agreed. Seeing the giant bear gradually sinking, Mai asked everyone to leave because it was useless to stay here. Chapter 136. After the first cooperation, the next few hunts went much smoother. At the same time, these young warriors became more cautious. Xiao Xian didn't join them. Sometimes he even let Caesar go with them. He didn't give Caesar more instructions. You don't care about Caesar anymore? Lang Jie was very curious. Since the giant bear, Xiao Xian had let Caesar move freely for several hunts. I'm training it to be independent. Caesar is very smart. Sometimes it can even help Yang Guang and the others. Xiao Xian said, Didn't you always tell them to be dependent on each other? Why are you talking about independence now? The specific situation needs to be analyzed. Different methods have to be used at different times. Xiao Xian answered. Since he couldn't understand, Lang Jie decided to stop thinking about it. He went to see what the other beasts were hunting. Xiao Xian stood on a tree and looked at a small stream in front of the tree. There were falling leaves and some broken twigs on the stream. The ancient people thought the fallen leaves were boats, and when they saw the black wood floating on it, they knew it was a boat. In fact, a boat was not as hard to make as Xiao Xian thought. A tree was enough. In the forest, there were many thick trees. A section of the tree trunk could be made into a canoe. However, the material of the tree still needed to be checked. The appearance of these beasts in the forest didn't attract the attention of the high-level ferocious beasts in their own territories. For them, these were just a few small beasts. They didn't care about them. Mai led the hunting team and these beasts from the first stronghold to the third. Although there were many small troubles along the way, the overall journey was quite smooth. For the members of the hunting group, this was also a novel hunting trip. Jiao, an eagle's cry came from the sky. Xiao Xian looked up. Cha-Cha wanted to fly to another place. When they arrived at the hunting ground of the third stronghold, 2/3 of the hunting time had passed. The hunting team wouldn't go far. Moreover, if they went further, they wouldn't be familiar with the terrain and species composition. Therefore, under normal circumstances, they would stay here for a few days, and then turn around and go back. However, Cha-Cha seemed to want to keep flying forward. If it weren't for Xiao Xian, it would have flown away long ago. In the sky, Cha-Cha had already told Xiao Xian with its unique flight path that it wanted to go there. Cha-Cha showed its strong desire to go in that direction when it came to the third stronghold. Uncle Mai, do you know where it is? Xiao Xian asked, pointing at the direction Cha-Cha wanted to fly to. Mai thought for a while and shook his head. I think I heard the old warriors mention it a long time ago. I can't remember. I only know that it's not a place we can go. I think it's called the Severing Land. Cha-Cha Land. Yes, Mai answered vaguely. He really couldn't remember. But when he was young, he heard other old warriors talking about it, saying that they couldn't go there. Since the ancestors stopped here and didn't go further, they must have their reasons. Out of their complete trust in their ancestors, every leader of the hunting group would not go any further after they arrived at this place. Even if they wanted to expand, they wouldn't go in that direction. Don't go there. Mai stared at Xiao Xian. He needed Xiao Xian's promise. After a pause, Xiao Xian nodded. Okay, I know. I won't go there. Mai finally smiled when he heard Xiao Xian's promise. He looked at the sky and waved to Xiao Xian, time to go back. Xiao Xian whistled, and then made a gesture to Cha-Cha in the sky. Jiao! Cha-Cha screamed unwillingly. It flew around the same place for a few more times, and then followed Xiao Xian back to the cave of the third stronghold. Because of its bad mood, it fought with an unknown bird on the way back. Unfortunately, the bird was more skillful. It only suffered a few scratches from Cha-Cha, while Cha-Cha was not only injured, but also bald. Mai felt even worse. Xiao Xian comforted it while applying medicine to Cha-Cha. When we go back, I'll ask the shaman what's over there. If it's okay, I'll take you there. As the return day was approaching, the hunters began to feel anxious. Although they felt that their beasts did a good job this time, they didn't fight, didn't cause any trouble to the hunting team, and even helped them to hunt a lot of prey. However, in the end, the only thing that was presented to the shaman was the animal skin roll in Xiao Xian's hand. Especially Lei, he had a conflict with Xiao Xian before, so he was worried that Xiao Xian would hold a grudge against him. Thinking of what other people did when he was angry, Lei dragged out a ferocious beast. This ferocious beast's level was not high, but it was the only ferocious beast that he and Meng had caught. In Meng's current situation, he could only catch wild beasts by himself. Xiao Xian looked at the prey in front of him and didn't know what to say for a long time. Was this blatant bribery? He had a lot of thoughts. Not only Lei, but the others also dragged their prey to Xiao Xian when they saw what Lei did. Guang's forest raccoons walked to Xiao Xian, shook its neck twice, and then lowered its head and spat out a piece of undigested bone in front of Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian. Seeing that Xiao Xian's expression was not very good, Yang Guang and his sister hurried to pull the forest raccoons away. Xiao Xian didn't record these bribes in the animal skin roll, but when he returned to the tribe and reported to the shaman, he said that these beasts were the reward for this trip. The shaman didn't care about this. He took the animal skin roll handed to him by Xiao Xian and studied it for 3 days. Lei Mao, Yang Guang, and his sister didn't know that Xiao Xian also recorded some pictures in the form of Wu roll when he was recording. And these pictures were the scenes of these beasts hunting prey with their unique hunting methods. The advantages and disadvantages, as well as the temperament of these beasts, could be clearly seen from the recorded words and the shaman's drawings. Xiao Xian didn't need to say much. After the first time, the shaman didn't make a decision immediately. Later, the shaman arranged several times to let these beasts stay in the same hunting group, but they didn't stay in Mai's hunting group, but changed their hunting routes one by one. Xiao Xian also followed the shaman's instructions one by one. He was lucky enough to walk around the hunting routes of other hunting groups, and had a general understanding of the distribution of species on each hunting group's hunting routes. After each hunting trip, Xiao Xian also drew a more specific map. On this map, roughly where there were wild beasts, ferocious beasts, where there were more herbs, where there were huge trees, etc., were all marked. Xiao Xian didn't tell anyone except the shaman, even old Ke didn't know. Several times when Xiao Xian went to other hunting groups, he took Caesar and Cha-Cha with him. After following the hunting routes of other hunting groups to the third location, Cha-Cha showed a strong yearning for a certain direction again and wanted to fly in that direction. But for the other times, it didn't do so. Xiao Xian asked the shaman why this happened, but the shaman didn't give a definite answer. He said that he would read the Wu roll records left by his ancestors to see if there were any detailed records. Before the situation was clear, Xiao Xian wouldn't take Cha-Cha to that place easily. Who knew what would be there? Could they come back safely? Because the shaman had talked with Lei and Mao, who had raised wild beasts, they tried their best to hunt as much food as possible before the winter. This winter, the shaman engraved the beasts one by one, except for Caesar and Cha-Cha. During the engraving process, the shaman called Xiao Xian over and planned to let Xiao Xian do it if he couldn't hold on. Gui Zhe, as the next shaman, was also called over to watch. The engraving site was right next to the fire pit. In order to ensure enough spiritual power during the engraving process, Xiao Xian was responsible for throwing fire crystals into the fire pit. It was snowing heavily, but there was no snowflake around, not even a drop of melted rain. Compared to other places on the mountain, the fire pit next to the fire pit was like a big heater. Xiao Xian threw a fire crystal into the fire pit and watched the red energy floating towards the shaman and himself. As for Gui Zhe, she hadn't awakened, so she couldn't absorb the energy of the fire crystal. "Let's start," the shaman said. The first one to be brought over was Lei's beast named Meng. The people who brought Meng left quickly, and Lei couldn't stay here, so they waited in another stone house. At the top of the mountain, there were only the shaman, Xiao Xian, and Gui Zhe by the fire pit. The shaman sat on the animal skin blanket, looking at the wild beast that was a little taller than him, and reached out his hand. The familiar two-horned flame totem appeared in the shaman's palm, and the blue totem gradually took shape, but it took longer than Xiao Xian. When the totem was completely formed, the shaman was sweating profusely. Fortunately, the energy of the fire crystal could be replenished quickly. This time, the shaman didn't have to guard against the surrounding dangers like Xiao Xian did that night. He was very safe here. The process was similar to what Xiao Xian did, but after the totem was formed, it took longer to imprint it. Fortunately, the totem didn't disperse when the last bit was imprinted, and this step was completed. At the moment when the totem was completed, the shaman was exhausted and fell down. If Xiao Xian didn't react quickly and caught him, the shaman would have fallen directly on the stone beside the fire pit. After the first totem, the shaman found that he could only hold on to one totem. It would take a longer time to imprint all 7 beasts. After one totem, he had to rest for a few days before he could imprint the next one. When the last totem was imprinted, almost half of the winter had passed. According to the ancient scroll, the success rate of imprinting the accompanying hunting dogs was only half. The shaman was prepared, but he didn't expect that all 7 beasts would be successfully imprinted. Although there were 4 times when the totem was almost scattered, it quickly condensed in the end and the totem was imprinted. The 7 beasts were also in good condition. In one winter, the 7 beasts imprinted by the shaman all grew up. However, they didn't change as much as Caesar did. Just like what was recorded in the animal skin scroll passed down by the ancestors, after the totem was imprinted, it was a gradual process that was relatively slow. At the same time, compared to the 7 beasts who were getting better and better, Cha-Cha was listless all day long. For Cha-Cha, who was usually full of energy, this was a very rare situation. Was it because it was the only exception among the 9 beasts in the tribe? However, the shaman said that Cha-Cha couldn't imprint. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he couldn't. Xiao Xian tried once, but he couldn't do it. The shaman also said that Cha-Cha was a real giant mountain eagle, and giant mountain eagles had their own beliefs. Chapter 137. In the winter, the 7 beasts that had been successfully engraved by the shaman had gradually begun to change their shape and appearance. Although the shaman had reminded them to prepare more food before the winter, the 7 beasts had grown up and their appetites had become bigger. The food still could not satisfy them. After all, with the increase of their level, the energy they needed would also change. It was just like the intermediate and senior totem warriors were not interested in the meat of ordinary beasts, because the meat could not satisfy their hunger. Until the end of the winter, Each of the beasts looked like Caesar when he had just been engraved. The originally fat beasts had become very skinny. Even the fat on Sia's body was worn down. After the winter, as in previous years, it was the most important sacrificial ceremony in the whole tribe. According to the records passed down by the ancestors, the beasts that had been successfully engraved could participate in the sacrificial ceremony, and the fire would no longer reject them. Therefore, on the day of the sacrificial ceremony, except for Cha-Cha, the other 8 beasts were brought to the top of the mountain and stood beside the fire pit. Participating in the sacrificial ceremony meant that they had officially become members of the tribe. This was a very strange scene. It could even be said that this was the only time in hundreds of years that people and accompanying beasts had participated in the sacrificial ceremony together. Everyone was very excited, because they were luckier than the ancestors to be able to witness such a scene with their own eyes. After the ceremony, the shaman recorded it in detail in the form of Wu roll. This was also one of his great achievements since he became the shaman. It was something that could be passed down from generation to generation. It was worth remembering. In contrast, Cha-Cha, who was left at home and needed to avoid the fire of the fire, looked more bleak. Although its appetite was not reduced, its spirit was not as good as before. After the sacrificial ceremony, the coldness of winter gradually disappeared. From the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, it became lively. A few days before the first hunting, several beasts that had been engraved would often go down the mountain for a walk. When they were young, they were often bullied by Cha-Cha. Except for the falcon in Gigu's hand and the turtle in Guize's place, all of them were caught by Cha-Cha several times in the air. Now that they had become ferocious beasts, or were close to becoming ferocious beasts, they were naturally not afraid of the Cha-Cha. If not for the fact that the Cha-Cha could fly, they would have probably retaliated. Fortunately, Caesar protected her and did not allow those few to tease the Cha-Cha. It was reasonable to say that Caesar was completely inferior to the others when they were all wild beasts. Even in the large wolf species, they were a relatively weak subgroup and were not as fierce as the others. But in fact, after the engraving was completed and he grew into a ferocious beast, Caesar's growth was much better than that of the other 7. Neither the cave lion Chi nor Mao dared to provoke Caesar. Cha-Cha continued to squat in its nest as it watched the minions that it had once bullied become stronger one by one. Seeing this situation, Xiaoxian was helpless. When the shaman had almost finished teaching this batch of newly awakened warriors, Xiaoxian went up the mountain again to have a good chat with the shaman. I plan to take Cha-Cha to have a look over there during this hunting trip. Xiaoxian sat opposite the shaman and said. The shaman understood what Xiaoxian meant by over there, so he remained silent. After a while, he went to the inner room and took out an animal skin roll. He handed it to Xiaoxian and said, "This is recorded in the ancient scroll left by our ancestors." After Xiaoxian told the shaman about Cha-Cha last year, the shaman carefully read the ancient scroll and extracted some relevant records. Xiaoxian took the animal skin roll and looked at the written records. These were only ordinary written records, and obviously, they were retold by others. The description was a little vague. It also mentioned the severing land that Mai had mentioned. When the ancestors opened up the hunting route, they were blocked by a thorny plant and could not go any further. However, when they stood at a high place, they could vaguely see the mountains in the distance. But because of the plant in the middle, they could not go any further. Therefore, the ancestors called that place the severing land. It cut off the road between the mountains and prevented anyone from entering. However, there were also some interesting things mentioned in the scroll. The shaman said that Cha-Cha was a giant mountain eagle, and the giant mountain eagles had their own belief and source of power. Xiaoxian did not know much about it before, so this animal skin roll had some information. It was said that the giant mountain eagle's power came from the snow abyss. It was a huge mountain covered in ice and snow all year round, so people called it the Eagle Mountain. Chief Ao once said that the giant mountain eagles came from the Eagle Mountain, but now it seemed that it was not true. The Eagle Mountain was the source of their power. As for whether it was the place where they were born, no one knew. A long time ago, the ancestors had only heard about the legends of the giant mountain eagles, but had never seen them with their own eyes. Some people said that the Eagle Mountain was the eagle's graveyard, while others said that the Eagle Mountain was the eagle's birthplace. There was not much information on the animal skin roll, so Xiaoxian finished reading it quickly. Is the place where Cha-Cha wants to go to the Eagle Mountain? Xiaoxian was puzzled. Maybe. The shaman said. After thinking for a while, Xian said, I still want to go with it. The shaman looked at Xian and was silent for a while. Then he said, It's very dangerous. You may not be able to come back. I know. Xian had made up his mind, so he would not change it. I'll have to trouble you to talk to Uncle Mai. The shaman did not try to persuade him again. He just sighed. Knowing that the shaman agreed with his decision, Xian grinned and bowed. Don't worry, I'll come back safely. The shaman felt his eyelids twitch. He waved his hand helplessly and signaled Xian to go out. It was the first hunt of the year, and there were several ferocious beasts in the team. Whether it was Ta or the 5 team leaders, they all wanted to perform well. Mai was excitedly discussing the upcoming hunt with Qiao when he heard the news brought by Xian. You want to go to the Severing Land? Mai's facial muscles twitched, and he said it word by word. He took a few deep breaths and clenched his fists. He wanted to beat up the person in front of him. He knew that Xian was not a person who would give up easily. Last year's promise was nothing. This time, he directly asked the shaman for help, and the shaman agreed. What else could they say? No, it should be the mountain range on the other side of the Severing Land. It could be somewhere else. I just want to have a look and see why Cha-Cha always wants to go there. Xian explained. It would have been better if he did not explain. Once he explained, Qiao Mai and his wife became more worried. They admired the warrior's fearless spirit, but it did not mean that they liked to see such suicidal things. Even their ancestors did not want to go there. How could Xian, who was not even a mid-level totem warrior, come back? How annoying. How annoying. However, this matter was not made public. It was not until the hunting group went out from the first hunting area to the third hunting area that they knew about it. The Severing Land. You can't go there. Xian, listen to Mai. Don't go there. You can't come back if you go there. Really, don't go there. If Cha-Cha really wants to go there, he can just fly there himself. Why do you have to follow him? Everyone in the hunting group tried to persuade Xian. After years of living together, they had become closer to Xian. They also thought highly of Xian, a new warrior. What was more, Xian was born in a cave near the mountain foot area, but he was not inferior to those people in the mountain. This made them feel proud. In the eyes of many old warriors in the mountain foot area, Xian's future achievements would not be inferior to those people in the mountain. In the future, he might even live in the mountain. Many of them often used Xian to encourage their children. For example, Sai's father. Every time he saw that Sai was not doing well, he would use Xian to criticize him. So, until now, Sai had never looked at Xian in a good way. But now, Xian wanted to go to the place that even their ancestors did not want to go. Wasn't he looking for death? Unfortunately, persuasion was useless. How could the shaman agree? No one could understand. But since the shaman agreed, they did not insist on persuading him. Mai called Xian alone to talk, and gave some good stone spearheads to Xian. Uncle Mai, if I still don't come back in 6 days, don't wait for me. Xian said. Mai wanted to say something, but stopped. In the end, he nodded. Xian did not plan to take Caesar with him this time. He told Old Ku about this matter. If he could come back, it would be fine. If not, Old Ku still had Caesar to accompany him. The day before the hunting trip, Xian did not take Caesar with him. Instead, he left Caesar in the tribe. When Xian left, Caesar still followed him for some distance. After being scolded by Xian, Caesar reluctantly stopped. After saying goodbye to the hunting group, Xian called Cha-Cha. Then, holding Cha-Cha's feet, he was carried by Cha-Cha and left through the air. The forest ahead was not easy to pass, and the road was not easy to walk on. It was also time-consuming, but it was different in the air. There were not many large birds in the area ahead. When Cha-Cha stood on the ground, he was slightly taller than Xian's shoulder. Therefore, it was not too difficult for him to carry Xian. After flying through the forest, Xian found that there were fewer animals in the forest. Half a day later, Xian saw the Severing Land mentioned in the ancient scroll. It was an expanse of brambles that were the color of rust. Brambles that were thick like water tanks and brambles that were covered in hard thorns that were like the tips of blades interweaved together, causing one to shrink back at the sight of it. It was like a terrifying forest that practically obstructed everything. In the gaps of the thorns near the ground, there were some small but dangerous creatures. Their blood-red eyes were like evil spirits, staring at every creature that flew over the thorns. Even the ferocious beasts in other parts of the forest would not set foot here. Looking at the endless brambles in front of him, and then looking at the quickly flashing figures in the gaps of the brambles, Xiao Xian decided to take a rest first. He would wait for Cha-Cha to accumulate his strength before flying over. Chapter 138. Before they set off, Xiao Xian had brought some jerky with him, but Cha-Cha liked to eat fresh. After Cha-Cha caught some prey and ate to its heart's content, it took Xiao Xian to fly again. Occasionally, a large bird would fly past this area. A few times, it fought with Cha-Cha, and Xiao Xian almost fell from the sky. If Cha-Cha was a little bigger, Xiao Xian could still stand on its back. Unfortunately, Cha-Cha was still too small. Xiao Xian twisted his body to avoid the awl-like beak of the bird. With one hand holding Cha-Cha's claw, he quickly took out the prepared stone needles from the animal skin pouch at his waist and threw them at the attacking birds. The stone needles had been dipped in a special grass juice, which had an extremely strong paralyzing effect. Xiao Xian always aimed at the parts of the body that the thick feathers of the attacking birds could not completely cover. As long as the skin was slightly broken, the medicine would seep in and take effect, and the birds would no longer chase after him. The birds that attacked Xiao Xian in front of him shook their heads and slowed down after being hit. They could not tell which direction they were flying in. However, this bird's resistance was probably not as strong as the ones before it. After being hit by the needle near its neck, it wobbled and flew up and down, then suddenly fell down. When it finally flapped its wings and stopped falling, it crashed into an arch bridge that was surrounded by thorns and thorns. Bang! The strong collision made the bird, which was already dizzy, even more dizzy. The thorns on the thorns also scraped off many of its feathers. The bird that was hit by the needle and hit the arch bridge was scratched by the thorns. Blood dripped down drop by drop. In the thorns, the creatures that smelled the blood immediately became excited. They nimbly passed through the crisscrossing thorns and ran towards the source of the blood. When Xiao Xian looked down from above, he saw the figures that quickly passed through the thorns from all directions, converging towards the bird that was still fluttering in the thorns. The creatures that swarmed over quickly surrounded the flying bird. They looked like monkeys, and their fur was the same color as the thorns. Most of them were only the size of 2 fists of an adult warrior, but they were very nimble. Even when they were in the thorns, they were very fast. The group of monkeys that lived in the thorns, densely packed, pounced on the bird and bit it. For a moment, Xiao Xian could only see a bloody mist exploding in that area. The blood splattered on the surrounding thorns. After it dried, it would probably be the same color as the thorns. Feathers floated in the bloody mist, one by one, and then slowly fell down. Some of the slower monkeys that could not squeeze in to enjoy the delicious meal wandered around the surroundings unwillingly. When they saw Cha-Cha flying in the sky, they screamed and waved their claws, as if they wanted to catch the bird in the sky. Not only Xiao Xian, even Cha-Cha, who had lowered his head to take a look, shivered. He seemed to have thought of the situation that he might encounter if he fell down. He flapped his wings vigorously, hoping to fly out of this place as soon as possible. "Don't let go, brother. If you let go, I'll die." Xiao Xian patted Cha-Cha's claws lightly. Screech! Cha-Cha responded and accelerated, flying towards the mountain range in the distance. Along the way, they encountered a few more birds. Fortunately, although the situation was dangerous, they safely flew over the thorns in the end. At dusk, the man and the bird finally landed on a tree. Both of them let out a long sigh of relief. No wonder the ancestors didn't want to get close to the severing land. Not to mention the tall, thick, and dense thorns, those monkeys could eat people quickly. Even a senior totem warrior could not fight against creatures that had a great advantage in numbers. Not to mention, this was only what Xiao Xian saw from the sky. Perhaps there were other creatures living in the thorns that had not been discovered yet. "You take a rest first. I'll be on guard." Xiao Xian patted Cha-Cha next to him and said in a low voice. Even if they passed through the thorns and came to this mountain range that looked no different from the hunting area, Xiao Xian could not let down his guard. Night came quietly. Xiao Xian couldn't find a cave nearby, so he could only find a place on top of a tree. He used the surrounding branches as camouflage, set up a small trap, and sprinkled some medicinal powder on the ground. He made do here for the night. The sounds in the forest could tell Xiao Xian if this place was the same as the hunting area. Listening carefully, The sounds made by different creatures mixed together to form a unique sound of the area. Therefore, as long as he listened to the sounds, he could make a preliminary judgment. Xiao Xian carefully distinguished these sounds. No, it was different. The nocturnal creatures here were very different from those in the hunting area. It seemed that he had to pay more attention. He could not judge based on his previous knowledge in the hunting area. Late at night, Xiao Xian was awakened by the sound of leaves rubbing against each other. Because he needed to be vigilant, he could not sleep deeply. This was a habit he had developed in the forest. He did not rest, but he could not rest at ease. He would wake up at the slightest abnormal sound. Listening carefully, the sound was like the wind blowing the branches full of dense leaves, and the leaves rustled. Rustle. But in fact, at this time, there was no wind at all. None of the leaves around Xiao Xian moved. The tree trunk under his feet trembled slightly, which meant that something had climbed up the tree. It was not on Xiao Xian's branch, but it was not far away. The rustling sound gradually became louder. Xiao Xian slightly comforted Cha-Cha, who was a little uneasy. Holding the hilt of the stone knife in his right hand, he held his breath and at the same time, he used his special vision to look outside. The branches were a little interfering, but Xiao Xian could still see through the leaves and see the situation outside. He looked in the direction of the sound. Was that a snake? Looking at its bones, it looked like a snake, but its outline was a little blurry. Its body surface was covered with many long, thin, and dense bone-like things. This was a creature that Xiao Xian had never seen before. He could only judge the creature that had climbed up the tree based on its general shape. The snake's body was much thicker than Xiao Xian's. It could easily swallow Xiao Xian in one bite, which gave Xiao Xian a bad feeling. Fortunately, it did not come to the branch where Xiao Xian and the others were. Instead, it went through the branches to another tree. When the strange snake was far away, the rustling sound also gradually faded away. Cha-Cha's anxiety also subsided. Xiao Xian tightened the stone knife in his hand and carefully exhaled. He did not know if this trip was worth it, but his adventurous nature from his previous life, coupled with Cha-Cha's yearning for a certain place, made Xiao Xian decide to make a trip. Perhaps there were more dangers ahead, but once he started, he could not turn back. Xiao Xian would also try his best to go as far as possible. Perhaps he would die and not be able to return to the tribe. There was enough food left in the tribe, and there was Caesar at Old Ku's side. His life would not be more difficult than Old Ku's former life as a stoneware craftsman. Thinking about it, Xiao Xian sneered in his heart. Would he die? How was that possible? Holding the knife, Xiao Xian closed his eyes and rested for a while. He had to continue tomorrow. At night, Xiao Xian woke up several times and saw several nocturnal animals. They were indeed different from the animals in the forest on the other side of the thorny belt. In the next few days, Xiao Xian quietly walked through the forest, while Cha-Cha flew by in the air. Xiao Xian only needed to follow Cha-Cha. It could determine the correct direction. This trip was to find the place Cha-Cha had been looking for, not to hunt. Apart from eating basic food when they were hungry, Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha would not do much fighting. They had to save more energy for the journey, and also be vigilant of the dangers around them. Where would they find the time and energy to hunt? Since Xiao Xian decided to bring Cha-Cha here, Cha-Cha was no longer lazy. It hunted fiercely every day, ate a lot, and hurried on with its journey. Many times, it even thought that Xiao Xian was too slow, so it grabbed Xiao Xian and flew up. After all, the road on the mountain was not as fast as flying. Sometimes they would meet some big flying birds. Cha-Cha would first avoid them. If it could not avoid them, it would fight them. If it could not fight them, it would run away. If it could not escape from them, it would lead them down and ask Xiao Xian for help. Just like that, they walked for 6 days straight. At this time, the hunting group that stayed in the third location did not see Xiao Xian, so they had to go back first. Xiao Xian did not expect that the place Cha-Cha wanted to go would be so far away. He and Cha-Cha had been walking for more than 10 days, but it seemed that they had not seen the end. During these 10 days, Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha almost fell into the stomach of the strange, ferocious beasts in the forest several times. Both of them had many injuries. When they were seriously injured, they would find a cave and rest for 2 days. They could not rush at this time. They had to rest well and maintain a good state, so that they could continue to move forward. Sneaking in this dangerous forest made Xiao Xian more sensitive to danger. At the same time, he became more skilled in hiding himself and his breath. Holding the scarred teeth knife, Xiao Xian moved his arm. His arm was broken when he dodged the saber-toothed beast, but it was not a big deal. He would feel better after a night's rest. The stone knives that he had brought with him were all broken. Xiao Xian had made some rough stone knives on the way, but they were all broken in the fight with the ferocious beasts. Now, the only thing he had left was Old Ke's teeth knife. But judging from the condition of the teeth knife, it would not last long. In front of them, there was a cliff about 100 meters high. Without Xiao Xian's signal, Cha-Cha had already flown down. Xiao Xian put the teeth knife into the animal skin bag around his waist and grabbed Cha-Cha's claw with his other uninjured arm. Cha-Cha flew down the cliff with Xiao Xian. In front of them, there was still a huge forest with no end in sight. But the trees in this forest seemed to be taller than the ones they had seen before. After flying for a while, Xiao Xian asked Cha-Cha to find a place to put him down. Cha-Cha did not respond. There were no birds around, so there were no threats. They could continue to fly. It felt that it was faster to fly. All right, then fly a little higher. I keep having the feeling that this place, before Xiao Xian finished his words, a branch that stretched out from the top of a giant tree suddenly bent, and then shot out like a spring towards Cha-Cha, who was about to fly over. At the moment when the branch shot out, the branches and leaves on its body quickly contracted. The leaves closed and stuck to the branch, and the branch fell down and stuck to its body like scales. It was a snake, and this strange snake reminded Xiao Xian of the creatures he had encountered on the night when he first entered this mountain. You're tuning in to the Blee Maze Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.